Okay, we have a bunch to talk about. We have a lot of injuries here. I actually want to run through the injuries before we look at real lineups and before we actually try to make some trades. But yeah, we have news regarding George Kittle. Obviously, we recorded the tight end rankings video yesterday. The Kittle news drops last night, where George Kittle is now officially doubtful for this week. So it looked like Kittle was going to be an absolute smash with no Deebo Samuel. Now, I guess all the targets go to Brandon Ayuk. Obviously, a must-start player with no Deebo, with no CMC, with no Kittle. I would find it hard to play Brock Purdy. Like, I'm not going to go through and play Brock Purdy this week. I actually dropped my backup quarterback in Caleb Williams. That way I could start Geno Smith over Brock. What? Oh, no. Okay. I misread this. Evan Ingram likely to be out on Monday. I read it as Evan Ingram likely to be cut on Monday. I don't know why I read it that way, but Evan Ingram looks like he's going to be out. We already knew that. Now, we actually had a report earlier this week saying that Kenneth Walker was listed as doubtful. Then we get an update that the Seahawks are optimistic that Kenneth Walker is going to play this week. So I have no idea what to expect with Walker. We're going to keep it stupid simple. Kenneth Walker plays, you play it. If Kenneth Walker's out, you start Charbonnet. Obviously, if we get any more updates tomorrow, I will let you know. DK Metcalf, fully good to go. A.J. Brown, officially listed as out. Jake Ferguson, fully good to go. CeeDee Lamb, fully good to go. Josh Downs, fully good to go. Roman Wilson, fully good to go. T. Higgins says he feels like 100%. He plans to play. Honestly, I would play T. Higgins. I think it is a phenomenal matchup and a massive, massive game here for the Cincinnati Bengals where they're going to score a zillion points. But let's go ahead and let's start diving into some of these questions. This first one's going to be from Laporta Potty. My friend, thank you for being a member of the flock. Going to be excited to check this out. Sorry that we took a little bit of time to get to it. I wanted to confirm that our team was the Sam Laporta one because it does look like we changed our name. But anyway, going through this, starting off at quarterback, we have Josh Allen. Honestly, if we have Allen here, I think you are good if you really wanted to drop Brock Purdy. Now, since it's a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, where the wide receiver depth just simply doesn't matter that much. If you wanted to keep rostering Brock, I'm not going to fault you, but also it's only a 10-team format, right? So we know for a fact that you aren't going to get any juice if you try to sell Brock Purdy. Going over to running back, we have Jahmyr Gibbs. We have the anchor holding down the position. Really like to see it. Beyond that, we have David Montgomery, Najee Harris as viable RB2s. I'd be excited to have Montgomery as an RB2 in a 12-team format. Honestly, to have Montgomery as an RB2 in a 10-team league, I don't feel great about it because to be an above-average RB2 in a 10-team format, you have to be a top 15 running back. I don't think Montgomery is a top 15 back here. But since we are a little bit weak at running back too, what we're doing that I like a lot is that we are rostering as many running backs as we possibly can get our hands on. We have Montgomery, we have Najee, we have Mostert, we have Dowdle, we have Bucky. Love to see it. Going over to receiver, we have the anchors at the top with Jefferson Wilson. Now, we did have to move Wilson down in rankings just a bit based off the slow start through the first 3 weeks. If you look at the target share that you've had for Garrett Wilson, though, he still looks like he is an alpha wide receiver in what should be a decent passing offense going into the future. So I'm not going to fault you at all for saying that Wilson's still a wide receiver 1. I still have him there. To have him as a wide receiver 2 is a straight up cheat code. Jalen Waddle, definitely a less interesting flex now that we have the Tua injury. We have Jameson here, though, to fill in for the flex in the short term until we get Tua back for the long term. Looking at Sam Laporta, this is a tight end that I definitely think is going to be better going into the future. I am very much concerned. I have Sam Laporta in my league as my tight end. I still don't think you need to be rostering a backup. I still think with Laporta, I'm starting him every single week regardless. Now, with that being said, he did fall down my rankings a bit. He is behind Trey McBride at the very minimum. Brock Bowers is quickly closing in. But ultimately, if we're looking at this team, I don't know if I have anything here. And I would love to try to come up with some kind of advice for you, my friend. I would love to try to figure something out. But the ultimate issue is if we wanted to make a move with this team, it's upgrading at running back 2. How we upgrade at running back 2 would potentially be selling one of the depth receivers to go package in a 2-for-1 deal for that upgrade. However, when we look at the wide receivers that we would have to sell, Jalen Waddle takes the hit due to the Tua injury. I don't think you can sell Waddle right now. And because Waddle took that hit, I don't think you can sell Jameson. So how we have constructed this team with rostering these 6 running backs and only 4 wide receivers in this league where you only start 2 receivers in a flex, given the players that we have at the very top of this lineup, I absolutely love it. I think that this is the best spot to be in. I really wish I had something else for you here, my friend. But honestly, I think you've already done a phenomenal job the way you've constructed this. If you could potentially pivot off of Najee Harris, maybe to a different running back like Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard. Let's see if there's anybody else here. To Rachaad White. Honestly, I'd rather have Ramondre Stevenson still over Najee Harris. Maybe after this week, you look to move off Najee for Ramondre if the Ramondre owner's football and panicking. Because I think Najee's also in a bad offense, but I think he's actually still going to be splitting that backfield with Jalen Warren. But again, I think that's all I have for you. I really wish that I had more advice, but you're already constructing this team the exact way that I would want it. We are a top 3 team here with the league analyzer. Definitely, it is much better than being in this situation down here, but really do appreciate you and hope I was able to help you out in some way, my friend. But let's move over to the next team and let's get this going for Dad Pooch. You'll see that this is a free team review for Dad Pooch here. That means he either did one of 2 things. 1, he's an annual mother flocker on flockfantasy.com with code FLOCK. Or 2, he took advantage of the free Underdog team review that we have, which is what I would 100% recommend anybody who wants a team review on one of these live streams. This is the cheapest way to do it. Go over to Underdog Fantasy with a link in the description, the link in the comment section. If you use promo code FLOCK, you are going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you will get a free team review in one of these live streams through flockfantasy.com. And on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, you will be getting that CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday. And you actually have a Patrick Mahomes free pick as well, which hopefully it doesn't take me too long to find that screenshot for you. But the Mahomes one is only if you are going to be new to Underdog. If you have been a member of Underdog Fantasy for quite some time, then you should have the CeeDee Lamb one, but you aren't going to get the Patrick Mahomes one. The Patrick Mahomes one is exclusively for first-time depositors, but I actually found that screenshot so I can share that little graphic with y'all. Bam, have that set up for the rest of the way. Yeah, if you want that free team review on flockfantasy.com, though, just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your Underdog account. That way I can grant you the free team review voucher. What's coming out from Dad Pooch says, thoughts on the team and any moves to make beyond. So this is a 12-team start 9 format. So this is a league where wide receiver depth matters so freaking much. Here, this is a league that we want to be building around wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. If we go ahead and dive into this, right now, quarterback, we have 2 extremely viable options. I mean, we are sitting here with both Kyler Murray as well as Jaden Daniels, operating under the assumption that this is a 1 quarterback format, which that's what the league analyzer says, looking at all the other teams in this league, where none of them are rostering 3 quarterbacks. I'm assuming that is the case. If it's a 1 quarterback format and you wanted to go ahead and maybe attack one of these teams with a bad quarterback room, say that team that's currently sitting with Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, and you wanted to come up with a trade where we potentially sent them, say like Jaden Daniels and David Montgomery to get a running back upgrade. Right now at running back, they have Kyren Williams. So honestly, if you could sell, say, Daniels and Montgomery to go get Kyren, or sell Kyler and Montgomery to go get Kyren, I think that would be an absolute no-brainer for the squad where you'd only need to roll with one or the other with the rushing upside. Now, going over to the running back position, we currently are sitting with the anchor with Devon Achane. Now, we did have Achane on that sell high video, primarily based around the idea that it's going to be a garbage Miami Dolphins offense. And if you can pivot from Achane to Justin Jefferson, if you can pivot from Achane to Amon-Ra St. Brown, then I definitely would look to just get the elite receiver that we have no red flags about. Now, with that being said, This is a team that running back, we're not super strong with. We don't have a ton of depth. So actually, I think that we are chilling. I think you can just hold on to Devon Achane here. He is ranked as my 10th highest player rest of season. Going over to RB2, we have David Montgomery. Looking at Montgomery, this is a running back that has the premium handcuff appeal where if Gibbs were to go down, he's immediately a top 5 option in fantasy football. Then beyond that, you have Chandler, Bigsby, Wright, Akers, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So obviously, we are just rostering a bunch of these guys that are an injury away from making a difference, trying to find the next Jordan Mason. Looks like Cam Akers is actually in an interesting spot that you have no Joe Mixon. So Akers is somebody that we're going to be sliding in now, especially with the fact that this is a much deeper starting lineup overall. You're still probably playing Montgomery and just throwing Akers into one of the flexes because the issue is going over here to wide receiver. Long term, this is a beautiful wide receiver room. Long term, we have A.J. Brown, Harrison, Kupp, arguably 3 wide receiver ones when all fully healthy. We have JSN, looks like a locked and loaded wide receiver 2/high-end wide receiver 3 right now. We have Roma Dunze, all the upside in the world rest of season. And looking at Josh Downs real quick in these rankings, Downs probably is a little bit too low. Don't mind me, but let's actually go ahead and update our ranks here so we can include, actually these are dynasty. Let's go over to redraft. So we can raise Downs up in our rest of season ranks. Downs, I think, jumps Mike Williams, jumps Dobbs, jumps Adonai Mitchell, probably jumps Michael Wilson. For now, we are going to be putting Joshua Dobbs up there at 60. I'm sorry, Josh Downs. I don't know why I keep saying Dobbs. We're going to put Josh Downs there. I like the Downs profile, but the ultimate issue that you have is we just haven't seen the passing volume yet in Indy. But nonetheless, I think this is a wide receiver room that's in a really good spot for the long term. The issue is clearly we are just struggling with the injuries as of today. Going over to the tight end position, we have Kincaid. I actually think that with Kincaid, we are solid. We're good to go. I understand the points haven't been there through the first 2 weeks. The underlying usage is solid. Obviously, last week he didn't play as many snaps you'd like to see, but he had to get evaluated for a concussion. So it's a little bit of a skewed data set. But regardless, I think really the only move that we want to be making with this team is if you're able to potentially go out there and if the league analyzer is pulling this ESPN correctly, where this is truly a start 9 format where we can start up to 4 or 5 receivers from week to week perspective. And we're sitting here with both the A.J. Brown and Cooper Kupp injury. If you could sell Kyler or Daniels and go get an extremely strong wide receiver coming in, say from one of these teams that have bad quarterbacks like Dak, Goff, like if we can pivot to Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, Brandon Ayuk, maybe even T. Higgins. If we sell Jaden Daniels for T. Higgins in a league where you have to be this deep at wide receiver, I think that'd make a lot of sense. This team is Purdy and Lawrence. If you could go ahead and sell one of those guys for Chris Godwin, I think that would make a ton of sense. And then if this is instead maybe a league where you're going to start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, just in case, there I actually think that you want to be packaging together a quarterback with Montgomery and getting a running back upgrade in that instance. But if it's that deep format where we can start up to 4 or 5 receivers, load up on the receivers. Load the freaking boat, my friend. But really do appreciate you and hope that I was able to help you out with this. Let's go over to our next question. It's coming out from Monkey D. Hobbits. Much love, my friend. Going to be super excited to check this out. Now, this is a start 7-12 team format. So with this being a start 7-12 team league, this is a league where the waiver wire options aren't phenomenal. They'll definitely be there, but still the wide receiver depth doesn't matter too much because you can only start 3 of them. You're saying, hey, Mason, just got Kamara and Njoku. We gave Rashad White, Devin Singletary, Mark Andrews to a team with 4 injured reserve players. Absolutely love to hear this price point, my friend. With Kamara, I previously had him ranked as an RB2, and obviously that is absolutely garbage. We had to update the ranking with Kamara. Kamara looks like he is a locked and loaded RB1 rest of season. Even if the Saints offense were to get a little bit worse, Kamara still most likely crushes, just given the fact that you are looking at a running back that gives you that solid floor with the reception volume here in New Orleans. But my team seems lost. Seems lacking in wide receiver, but hoping Puka comes back strong. We got him in a deal for Jaden Reed and Shakir after week 1. Phenomenal trade there. What do you think? Keep it up in the Flock League. Much love, my friend. Yeah, in the Flock League. really, really hoping that we can bring it home. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this. So like we said, this is Monkey D Hobbits. And looking at this team, they're at number 4. This is a squad where at quarterback, we are currently sitting with Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert. So let me pull this up to just confirm. But we had the report that came out earlier today that was saying that Justin Herbert currently is dealing with the high ankle sprain. So if that is the case, I think that you more likely than not actually need to just go ahead and drop Justin Herbert. It doesn't sound like this is a situation in which he's going to be missing a ton of time. Like there's no way he goes to the IR. But yeah, looking at this, it's not guaranteed that he is going to be out here playing this Sunday, but almost regardless, right? The passing volume hasn't been there in Los Angeles. We have an elite quarterback that we're able to start every single week regardless. I'm going to go and look at the current odds that we have with this Chargers game and see if potentially sportsbooks can give us an indication if Herbert's going to be playing or not. So the Steelers are now up to being 2.5-point favorites. So it does sound like Herbert, more likely than not, is going to be missing this game. The Steelers are actually up to 3-point favorites on certain books. So yeah, regardless, if Herbert misses any time at all, I don't think the ceiling's there for him to impact your starting lineup when you have Jalen Hurts. So I'd probably go ahead, move on from Justin Herbert and look to pick somebody else up. Now going over to running back room looks great considering that we have Kamara, we have James Cook, 2 running backs that are absolutely crushing it at this point. Both running backs are ranked as RB1s for me rest of season. Looking at Dobbins down here, Dobbins is actually a low-end RB2 for me. The reason for this is if you are looking at the J.K. Dobbins just games that he has crushed in through the first 2 weeks, they were against the Raiders and the Panthers. He is still technically splitting this backfield with Gus Edwards. And he has 4 receiving yards through the first 2 weeks. So what I am potentially looking at is for us to more likely than not sell Dobbins if we can. Obviously, he's been phenomenal. But if he is going to be in tougher matchups going in the future and Harbaugh still wants to implement a running back by committee here, I think that Dobbins is a low-end RB2. And from the price points that I've seen people selling him at, it seems like people have been able to pivot off and actually get to legitimate wide receiver ones. Now, going over to wide receiver, we have CeeDee Lamb, we have Puka Nacua, we have JSN, we have Ladd McConkey. So sitting here at the wide receiver position, obviously, when we have the anchor at the top with Lamb, we get a lot of flexibility with what we can do through the rest of the way. I will say, based off the volume that we actually saw Harrison command in week 2, I think that the Greg Dortch stream is kind of dead. I think go ahead and drop Greg Dortch. I think there'll always be players in the waiver wire that have that similar profile. I definitely would roster DeMarcus Robinson because not only do you have that injury to Puka Nacua, but also looks like Kupp is going to be missing some time here. So Robinson does presumably have that path open to being the wide receiver 1 for the Rams. So I actually think that I would look to drop Greg Dortch as well and pick up another running back off of the waiver wire if possible. And then going over to what we could potentially do here at wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Obviously, Ladd McConkey, not very exciting if you are going to be dealing with this Justin Herbert high ankle sprain. And this is a team that wants to run the ball, play good defense. I mean, you're consistently seeing sportsbooks put them near the bottom of the NFL with their implied team totals. I mean, that was the case this week against Pittsburgh, even before you had the Justin Herbert's confirmed high ankle sprain. I know some people were speculating on it earlier in the week. But yeah, I think that if we could potentially grab another viable wide receiver here, it would be great to fill in the short term. But we are looking at a couple different viable starters, right? We have Lamb, we have Puka. We have Lamb, we have JSN for the short term. Long term, we have Puka. For the flex, we have Dobbins. Or let me just tell you exactly who I actually have in terms of options that you can pivot to instead of J.K. Dobbins. Like if I'm looking at my rankings right here, and let's go ahead and let's pull this up. So, of course, if you want to see my rankings exactly on the site, just hit sort by, and you can go over to my ranks here. We're going to click Mason Dodd. And here at running back, I actually do have J.K. Dobbins down at RB22. If we could pivot over to like Tony Pollard, who's had the receiving volume, Aaron Jones has had the receiving volume, Montgomery, I just think's in a much better offense. Jordan Mason, 3-down workload. James Conner, 3-down workload. Rachaad White has the receiving volume. Derrick Henry just thinks, obviously you're not getting up to the Derrick Henry range though. But honestly, what I'd be looking to do is if we can pivot off of Dobbins and maybe get to one of these other running backs like Mason, Montgomery, Jones, Pollard, that would be interesting for me just because I am worried about the regression hitting for J.K. Dobbins himself. But ultimately, really, that's the only thing I think we can say with this team is, actually, there are a bunch of different things. I would cut Greg Dortch, pick up a different player off the waiver wire. I would cut Justin Herbert, pick up another guy, preferably go for 2 running backs. Obviously, we're going to continue to churn this as well. I just don't necessarily think that we need to be rostering that extra quarterback when we have Jalen Hurts. Like the Anthony Richardson team in this league doesn't have a backup quarterback. The Jaden Daniels team doesn't. The C.J. Stroud team doesn't. The Lamar Jackson team doesn't. The Kyler Murray team doesn't. So if you ever really needed a QB, you can go ahead and you can pick up one off the waiver wire. But I think that's all I have for you, my friend. Really do appreciate you. Really hope that I was able to help you out in some way. And yeah, let's reiterate. If we could sell high-end Dobbins and get a mid running back 2, high-end running back 2 price tag, I would. If we could move on from Greg Dortch, move on from Justin Herbert, pick up some interesting running backs off the waiver wire, I would look to do that as well. And I like the trades that we made previously. Now, Bovin Bijan coming out with our next team review. We're actually going to get right back to this for a second, but let me instead, real quick, get to a start sit question just so we can get a little bit of a different taste here. It's the start sit question. It says, don't know who to start at running back 2. Same with wide receiver 2. And what's left over should be put in the flex. Thank you. Appreciate it. Also, can I deposit $10 on Underdog if I live in a state where... So Underdog is available in every state, not Nevada, Washington, Louisiana, Montana, I believe, maybe doesn't have Underdog. Hawaii doesn't have Underdog. But the vast majority of states have Underdog. Like I live in Texas and we don't have any sports books here, but we still have Underdog. But let's move this over. This is at wide receiver 2 between Flowers, Metcalf, Johnston. I'm definitely going to be going with DK Metcalf over Flowers now that it sounds like Metcalf's hand's good to go. Going over to tight ends, I hope that we started Dalton Kincaid. I would be very nervous if we didn't. And then honestly, it's between Kyron and Mason here at running back in the flex. I think we go with Jordan Mason and Kyron Williams. I don't necessarily think that we need to go back and forth on this too much just because they're both a place here. We're definitely not playing Zay Flowers over them, my friend. Okay. But let's submit that. And let's go back over to Adam's team above and Bijan. And I do want to reiterate, of course, you can purchase a start sit question, trade question, roster review through flockfantasy.com. You can get a start sit question for like $3.50, trade question for like $3.50 if you're a subscriber on the site. Everything's 30% off if you're a subscriber on the site and use code FLOCK. Any questions to me? The team review, definitely a lot more expensive just because it takes so much more time. But that's why I recommend definitely just going through and going with the cheapest route. If you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy, which you can find that link in the description, comment section, live chats, there you will get that free Mahomes pick for Monday night, the free CeeDee Lamb pick as well, more than less than half total yard. And if you use code FLOCK, 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 and the free team review on flockfantasy.com. So if you're wanting a team review on the site, like I said, definitely recommend going with the way it only costs $10. But let's move this over. This is that above and Bijan team. We are 4th in the league analyzer, but if you look at the top 4 teams, they're pretty much all identical, right? The gap between 4 and 5 is larger than the gap between 1 and 4. So I will say that we should definitely update the profile pic here, my guy. We're really rolling with an ESPN helmet. We got to take a step up. It says, hey, Mason, feel like we drafted a playoff team, but since injuries have decimated the squad, what kind of moves should I be making at all? Thanks. No, thank you, my friend. So going over and looking at this with quarterback, currently we have Kyler and Fields. So honestly, based off what we've seen with Fields through the first 2 weeks, he's not running the ball as much as what we saw 2 years ago. And at the same time, the passing volume hasn't been there, which is kind of the expectation with Justin Fields always. I think you can honestly just go ahead and let go of Fields and just roll with Kyler Murray, knowing that we have the rushing upside as well as the passing volume. With Kyler, I don't necessarily think you need to be rostering 2 QBs here. To go through and look at some of the other teams, I mean, yeah, if I had Dak, if I had Goff, I'd probably roster 2 QBs. The Allen team has one. Jalen Hurts only rostering 1. The Caleb team's rostering 3 quarterbacks. But yeah, this is only a 10-team league. The Burrow team's only rostering 1. So if you really needed to, you could find a quarterback off the waiver wire if need be. Now, going over to running back, we have the anchor with Bijan. Bijan is my running back 1 rest of season. We've had this for a couple of weeks. Really, if you're looking at Breece Hall, I think Breece is phenomenal as well, but he is having to deal with Braylon Allen in his own backfield. But regardless, we have the anchor running back with Bijan. We have somebody that we can play at RB2 with David Montgomery. We have desperation depth pieces with Zamir White and Samaje Perine. Obviously, we are not that excited about the running back depth with this team, given the injury that you have to Isaiah Pacheco. Now, of course, with that being said, if you were to have an injury, if you were to have Zamir White actually be in an offense that wants to run the ball a little bit more, it does look like the snap usage last week was there for Zamir to look like a 3-down running back. The primary issue, of course, was the Raiders just had completely abandoned the run last week, but they got down big. This week, I actually think that Zamir could be a viable play, but it's just so much tougher when we're having to talk about Zamir White with the Pacheco injury. Going over to receiver, you have Harrison, Rashee Rice. So arguably 2 wide receiver 1s rest of season. The Cup injury makes it where all of a sudden we're having to rely on Jameson Williams for our flex spot. We have the Jordan Addison injury as well. The saving grace for this team is this a league where you start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. If this was a league where you had to start multiple flex spots, then you'd be screwed, my friend. If we had to go with multiple flexes, I mean, we would, without any buys, have to roll in and actually be starting Zamir White in one of those flex spots. But as it stands right now, I mean, you can slide Jameson Williams into the flex with how good he has looked, while at the same time, with the fact that there is more than enough passing volume to go around in Detroit. He is playing a career high when it comes to his overall snap rate in this offense. So I think you're fine to just almost kind of sit here and wait until we get Kupp back. Obviously, Pacheco, it's much tougher to assume that's ever going to happen. But once we end up, I mean, we don't even need to just wait till we get Kupp back. If you end up getting, say, just Jordan Addison back and we have some viable depth here, obviously the main concern that this team has is running back. Instead of making a trade, I think you don't have enough firepower to make a trade given all the injuries that this team's dealt with. I think that we want to be attacking the running back position with quantity over quality. I think we just need to be rostering as many running backs as we possibly can. So once we're in a situation where Addison or Kupp comes back, Addison will come back first. Then we go ahead, we drop Jacoby Myers. We pick up another running back off the waiver wire. We drop Justin Fields. We pick up another running back off the waiver wire. At that point, we are sitting here. We are rostering 6 running backs on the active squad. Once Kittle's back, I think you drop Parkinson, pick up another running back off the waiver wire. We roll through the rest of the season in a league where you're going to start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex with Harrison, Rice, Kupp, Jameson, Addison as our wide receiver core with 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, and the rest of our roster slots being filled out at RB. Because obviously the Isaiah Pacheco injury just makes things so tough. And honestly, I think we need to be moving Pacheco down even further in our rest of season rankings. And also now that Mixon is going to be missing here, we actually have to be moving J.K. Dobbins up higher in these rest of season ranks. Yeah, no Pierce as well. Obviously, these are not our weekly ranks. If you look at the weekly ranks on the site, Cam Akers is much higher than this. But I think we probably put Akers at 48. And then also we need to be moving Isaiah Pacheco down even further. Because now it does really seem like Pacheco is going to be potentially missing almost the entire season. So, like, I would maybe rather just have Braylon Allen at this point. We'll move Pacheco down to 39. But, yeah, I think we try to solve running back with quantity over quality. I don't think you have the firepower to make a trade here, to be honest. But let's go over to our next question. This is a team review coming out from Mark. My guy, really do appreciate you. Going to be excited to go ahead and check this out. This is a Dynasty Superflex 10-team start 10 format. So just to make sure everybody knows here, this is a Dynasty League. We are thinking the long-term. Well, we got to balance. Are we going long-term or short-term with our builds? We are right now kind of in the middle of the road if we're looking at the league analyzer. There are a couple juggernauts in our team. Like if you look at Destined to Perish, this is a team that has Josh Allen, CJ Stroud in a Superflex format. They also have Lamb, Jefferson, Harrison, Collins, Rome, It's going to be very difficult to contend with a team like this, right? It is going to be very, very difficult. But the issue is we can't just say, oh, yeah, we can't contend with that team, so we need to burn it down and play for the long term. So instead, we need to go ahead and we need to the reason being, I just got a little distracted, is that other team is so damn good for the long term that's not a viable pivot. We're going to have to deal with them whether it's this year, next year, the year after, You're always going to have to deal with that team. Now, going through and trying to map out the issue that I'm going to have with this team right away is this is a roster that, as it stands right now, we do not have any 2026 picks. We have one 2025 first. It's our own. But in terms of if we were able to go through and burn this down in 2025 and go for rebuild, that path is just no longer viable. And if we go ahead and we look at what we have at quarterback here, we have Herbert, just got injured. We have May, not starting. We have Bryce Young, just got benched. So our quarterback room in the Superflex League is we're starting Deshaun Watson this week and then nobody at the Superflex spot, or if we're lucky, Justin Herbert. We're starting a couple quarterback twos and a 10-team Superflex format. Going over to running back, our most valuable RB here is not playing this season or not playing right now. We look at the rest of this running back room. I mean, right now at running back, we're starting Zach Moss and Rico Dowdle. We have Cam Akers. Sorry, we have Akers. We need to update our dynasty rankings when it comes to Akers and P. Ryan. But nonetheless, not a good starting lineup in a 10-team league. At wide receiver, we have Wilson as the cornerstone piece. We can build around him in the short term and the long term. Kind of say the same thing about Tank Dell. With Brandon Ayuk and T. Higgins, these are not players that I would look to say they're going to fall off and they're not going to be as good in 2025 as they are right now, or they're not going to be as good as in 2026 as they are right now. But just knowing the overall mindset of dynasty fantasy football managers, these are wide receivers that more likely than not will be less valuable next offseason in comparison to what they are currently. So if we did decide to pivot over to a rebuild where we are trying to optimize value for the long term here, Ayuk and Higgins would be guys that I'd throw on the block, but because the production's not going to be falling off immediately, it's not like these are players that you would just absolutely have to go out there and sell. Going over to tight ends, we have Pitts, we have Andrews. Pitts, I think you can build around him kind of regardless. Andrews would definitely be somebody that I would look to sell on a rebuilding team. But I mean, as we sit here and look at this roster, I just have a very hard time imagining this being a contending team this season, specifically in a 10-team league. Maybe if it was a 12-team format, this would be a little bit different. But what I more likely than not would be looking to do here is I think I would be looking to kind of use this as a rebuilding year, get ready for 2025, and really look to contend next season. Next season, May will be starting. Justin Herbert will be fully healthy with another year to develop with this overall coaching staff. Jonathan Brooks will actually be playing. I just think that it's been such a bad run out with these quarterbacks. And the last thing you can do is sell your 2025 first to panic and try to contend right now. So I think these contending assets, I throw on the block. I try to retool. I try to actually play for 2025. I think the guys that you have to sell Mark Andrews. You have to sell Zach Moss. You have to go send Cam Akers and see if we can find a sucker to give us a second round pick right now. The guys that I would throw on the trade block and would be optional sells depending on the price point that you could get. Ayuk, T. Higgins. Like if you could sell T. Higgins for a future first, I would. If you could sell Brandon Ayuk for a first and an exciting rookie, I would. By an exciting rookie, I mean a rookie that went round one of this year's rookie draft. I mean, for the love of God, don't consider Bucky Irving as exciting. So yeah, I'm sorry, my friend. I wish I had something more exciting to say, but I do think that this is a team that probably needs to pivot over to a rebuild, and I don't really see another path for it. But I really do appreciate you. Really do appreciate you, and hope that I was able to help you out somewhat. But let's move this over and get this going for Coley 101. My friend, going to be excited to check this squad out. This team that is a 12-team start 7, so only 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. Looking at the league analyzer, we are relatively all close here, the teams at the top. So while we are 6th, the gap between us and the team at 1 is less than the gap between us and the team at 9, right? So really, you just need to be inside that top 6. Now, it says, new to fantasy this year and football in general. Like, I need help in the RB room. So going ahead and looking at our quarterback room, I actually need to be moving Jordan Love up in our rest of season ranks now that it looks like Jordan Love will be good to go potentially this week or next. I think I would rather have Love over Baker. I'm actually going to drop Purdy below Baker given all the injuries that we have in San Fran. I'd probably rather have Love over Goff, and we're not going to put Love over Goff until we end up getting Jordan Love 100% good to go. But regardless, I think you're fine at quarterback. I'm actually having to start Geno Smith myself at quarterback this week. Not super excited about it, but obviously you'll be much more excited when you are able to get Jordan Love back into this offense. Going over to running back. We currently are sitting with Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones. So, I mean, I'd be very excited with Derrick Henry or Aaron Jones as an RB2. To have them as my RB1 there, it's a little bit scarier. Just given the fact it's a full PPR format, if you're looking at Derrick Henry, he's just simply not going to be catching the ball here. But honestly, having an overall weaker running back room is okay, considering the fact that we are just absolutely crushing here at wide receiver and tight ends. Wide receiver, we have CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams. So we have the elite wide receiver 1 that's an anchor that we can build a team around. We have an extremely strong wide receiver 2 if the passing volume's there in Las Vegas. Obviously, it was there last week. We have Kupp for the long term. Obviously, since Kupp is injured, it does make sense actually bolstering the wide receiver depth here a bit with McConkey, Shaheed, and Darnell Mooney. Probably actually end up starting Shaheed in the flex spot this week. But yeah, honestly, there's not really much that we can do in terms of pivoting off of one of these depth receivers at the moment, even though we're extremely strong at the top with Lamb and Adams, specifically because that Cooper Kupp injury is putting us in a difficult situation where our depth is limited with the injury to Mostert, with the injury to Kupp. And actually, I think we need to go ahead and another adjustment we need to make is we need to be moving Raheem Mostert behind Braylon Allen. I'm going to be moving Allen up to RB 36 in our rest of season ranks. But besides that, we have Hunt as a high upside piece as well. We have the tight end 1 in fantasy, McBride. So obviously we're only having to roster 1 tight end there. So really with the team from a construction perspective, I actually really like it. And I don't think that there's much to do. If it is that full PPR format, though, I still would like to pivot off of Derrick Henry. A running back that I've ranked almost back-to-back with Derrick Henry is Kenneth Walker. where Walker, I mean, at least from the glimpse that we had this year, looked like he was going to have more of that receiving usage in comparison to what you were looking at with Henry. Looks like he has a little more juice than Henry, and the overall running back opportunities may not be a massive gap between the two. So I actually think that I would really like to pivot off of Derrick Henry, go get to Kenneth Walker if possible. Obviously, there are a couple different other running backs that we would way rather have. Like, I'd way rather have Josh Jacobs if you could somehow get to Jacobs. Looking at this team, I mean, they don't really need much, so it'd be difficult to try to sell them something on top. But maybe if you could go like Derrick Henry and Kareem Hunt to get to Josh Jacobs, and just if they would be interested in rostering Hunt over someone like Tyler Johnson, or Derrick Henry and Darnell Mooney to get to Josh Jacobs, that'd be an absolute no-brainer. But obviously, it's tough to convince in order to that. I would say the same thing with James Cook. I would do those deals for. Obviously, you're not touching Gibbs or Achane. There's no way we can get up there. To maybe Mixon, this ankle injury actually opens up a little bit of a buy low opportunity for you. I actually think we're probably going to drop Mixon behind Jacobs in our rest of season ranks, given the Mixon ankle. I think I would rather have Jacobs over Mixon. I'd honestly probably just straight up this week rather have Cook over him as well. But yeah, really, from a construction perspective, I really like the squad, my friend. I think you're going to be really good when we get cut back. Really, the only thing I'll do in the meantime is throw Derrick Henry on the trade block and see if there are any interesting things that come our way. But let's move this over. Really do appreciate you again. And we'll get to this team in just one second. But let me first see if we can answer any free questions in the live chat for everybody here. If you have any questions, please go down to the chat and drop them if you got them. Okay, so let's move this. Two Shot says, I use code FLOCK, but I don't know how to get a free team review. So just go to the, if you use code FLOCK on Underdog One, make sure you have an account set up on flockfantasy.com with the same email address. And then every morning, what I do is I go through, take all the email addresses Underdog gives me, credit them with free team reviews. So if you use code FLOCK on Underdog yesterday or any day before, after September 5th, and you still don't have your free team review, maybe you made your account on Flock Fantasy too late. So just reach out to me on Discord, email me, and I'd be happy to rerun that for you and get you that free review if you made it too late. Opposite says Whittington or Jalen Waddle. So I want to be on record. You should be very concerned about the Miami Dolphins this week. The Miami Dolphins are going to be a very bad offense. There's not going to be a lot of passing volume. Now, at the same time, if you start Jordan Whittington over Jalen Waddle, there's no helping you. There is no helping you, my friend. You almost deserve to lose, to be honest. Okay. Chris says, I use code FLOCK last football season. Can I still get a team review? I'm very sorry. There's always just new promos on Underdog Fantasy. So the new account promo, obviously in the off seasons, like, oh, you get a draft guide. But now in season, the new promo for this year that we built it out with the site is for the team review for that first time deposit. Tresner says he's lying about the Dolphins. Absolutely lying. Yes, I'm lying about the Dolphins, guys. Skylar Thompson's going to be phenomenal. Start all your Skylar Thompson. Pick him up off the waiver wire. Phenomenal pickup. Have fun, Tresner. Okay, let's move this over. Lucas says, start Ayuk or James Cook in a full PPR format. I may go Ayuk. Now that you have no Kittle, let me pull up the updated lines that you have for this Niners offense. Implied team totals week 3. So right now, the Niners are sitting with an implied team total about 25 points. So it's an offense that's supposed to be able to score. They're supposed to be able to score. I don't see how they score if Ayuk's not heavily involved. Like literally going and looking at the underdog picks, they have Ayuk higher, lower 72. Honestly, I would really be interested in the Ayuk touchdown. Yeah, Ayuk, they currently have at higher, lower 13.5 fantasy points. James Cook, on the other hand, they currently have at 12.5 fantasy points. And underdog at the same time is half PPR. So if you're playing in a full PPR format, especially, where we're expecting Ayuk to have more receiving volume, more receptions, I think you go Ayuk. Okay, let's move this over. Marley says Rasheed and Bowers. I would way rather Rasheed Rice over Brock Bowers, both in the flex spot as well as rest of season here. Not close. Okay. Mondo says, what should I do with Michael Pittman and Tank Dell? If you were able to create a time machine and go back to the day that you drafted them and tell yourself, do not draft these two players, you probably should. Now, I've tried to create a time machine for a multitude of different things. Sadly, I've not been able to do it myself. If you are smarter than I am and you can, then go for it, my friend. Now, in terms of what we do with them today, as of September 20th, when all your league mates have seen them putting up 0 points, when all your league mates know exactly how bad they've been, you're probably stuck with them. You put them. I think Tank Dell is actually going to be much better going in the future than what he has been. Michael Pittman Jr. I'm a little more nervous about, which sucks to be me because I have more Pittman than Dell. I really avoided Dell this year. I was fine taking Pittman. But yeah, the passing volume's not there in Indy. Nico Collins is dominating in Houston. I think it'll be better going to the future. Obviously, they're too good to cut. They've been so bad, nobody wants to buy them, so you're just kind of stuck with them. Okay. Harrison says, should I yard Richardson, Etienne, and I'm assuming, should I trade Richardson, Etienne, and Brooks for CMC and Hurts? So Etienne to CMC, I'd rather have McCaffrey rest of season. Richardson, Jalen Hurts, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts rest of season. We're paying Jonathan Brooks to get it done, I would. Maybe if you're 0-2 and you're telling me, oh my gosh, you need to, I need all the points I can get in my starting lineup, then 100%. Then maybe if you're 0-2, you keep ETN. But if you can reasonably get by and wait for McCaffrey, I think getting McCaffrey Hurts there makes a ton of sense. Michael says, who won $150,000 on Underdog a few years ago? Does anybody in this live chat know a particular man that maybe is a 16th place in Best Ball Mania? That maybe has not only won a single Underdog tournament, but has won multiple on a live stream? All right, we found it. Ferd 1921. Sounds like it was Ferd. Marley says, should I trade Jordan Mason and Rasheed Rice for Bijan Robinson? I would. I think it's a deal that would look dumb in weeks 3, 4, or 5. But if we end up getting McCaffrey back in week 6, 7, and Jordan Mason effectively turns into a 0, and you traded Rasheed Rice for Bijan Robinson, then yes, I think that is a no-brainer. No-brainer. Okay. Let's move this over. Tony says, Geno or Purdy? This is a good question. I sat here contemplating this literally for 30 minutes today, staring at my lineup. Geno was on the waiver wire for me. I had Brock Purdy and Caleb Williams as my quarterbacks. What I ended up having to do is I ended up having to drop Caleb Williams so I could pick up Geno Smith and play him over Brock Purdy. As I was looking at it going, how the hell do I play Brock Purdy with no McCaffrey, with no Debo, and with no Kittle? So I think we end up with Geno Smith here. At least that's the decision that I made, my friend. And to be completely honest with you, what I did just to confirm this for myself, because our league's on Sleeper. So Sleeper, the projection that they just give you at the bottom, which is kind of meaningless, actually had Purdy projected higher than Geno. But I ran over to Underdog to see what the points projections were that you could actually go higher or lower on. So I put some value on him. And they had Geno at higher lower 17.35 points. Whereas they have Brock Purdy higher lower 16.85. So they have Geno higher than Purdy as well. I don't know. It's just it is a tough spot. Okay. Let's move this over. Jay says Akers, Christian Kirk, or DeMarcus Robinson. I think this is very easily Cam Akers, to be honest with you. It would be different if this was a situation in which Cam Akers was all of a sudden having to split with Dameon Pierce, where they were telling us, oh yeah, Cam Akers is starting back, but we don't know exactly what the usage is going to be between Akers and Pierce. But the thing is, you had no Dameon Pierce in this game. Not only do you have no Mixon, but with no Pierce as well, it is just going to be Akers and Dare. So all of a sudden, Akers is going to have every single touch on first and second down. So I think Akers is actually a very easy play. I wonder if they have a pickup for Akers yet on Underdog. Yeah, they actually do have a Cam Akers. They have Cam Akers picks up right now. They have Akers higher, lower 12.55 fantasy points. They have Christian Kirk higher, lower 8.15. And they have DeMarcus Robinson higher, lower 8.15. So yeah, I think it's Cam Akers by a decent margin, to be honest with you. But let's move this over. And of course, if you wanted to check out any of those picks over on Underdog Fantasy, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section. If you use promo code FLOCK and you are a new member of Underdog Fantasy, you're going to be getting a CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half total yard. That's actually live to everybody right now. And you're going to be getting a Patrick Mahomes free pick, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday on top of that. Plus, if you use code FLOCK, you get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 and a free team review over on flockfantasy.com. And let's go over to flockfantasy.com so we can get into one of those free team reviews. LGBTQB1 used one of them. Much love, my friend. Going to be excited to go ahead and check this out for you. But this is a 10-team start 7 format. It says, avid enjoyer of your content, looking for ways I can improve my roster. Any trade advice you can part my way? Thanks. No, thank you, my friend. Going to be excited to check this out. So this is a league where no depth matters. It's a 10-team format. Start 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. We are just all in on studs and duds, studs and duds, studs and duds. All right, let's go ahead and move this over. So looking at quarterback, we are currently sitting with Jalen Hurts. Obviously, if we have Hurts here, this is a situation in which we don't need a backup quarterback. You're able to start him every single week, regardless of matchup. Really no hesitation with that whatsoever either. Going over to running back, we have Achane and Jordan Mason. So it's another week with no Raheem Mostert. So I thought Mostert was going to be in earlier in the week based off the practice reports, but now all of a sudden, Achane yet again looks like a locked and loaded top 5 running back this week based off of PPR volume, despite this being a horrendous offense. Now, going over to Jordan Mason, obviously a plug-and-play guy that's a locked and loaded stud until CMC comes back. Once CMC is back, Jordan Mason just poof, turns to dust and is no longer anything at all. And then at that point, we will be kind of sitting here twiddling our thumbs, trying to figure out the matchups between Najee, Singletary, and Mostert. So short-term running back, we're absolutely crushing. Long-term running back, we potentially have an issue at RB2. Now, going over to wide receiver, we are currently sitting with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson as our two anchors at the very top. Obviously, Wilson's been disappointing. We had to move Wilson down our rankings. I still do view him as a top 12 wide receiver rest of season. I still think that this is a phenomenal wide receiver room. We are sitting with Malik Neighbors, who's in a garbage offense, but just seeing every single target in said offense. And then beyond this, when we have Rome Odunze, Terry McLaurin, Shaheed, Demarcus Robinson, obviously we have a bunch of players with name appeal. But my thing is, I just simply don't see a path for us to be able to get Demarcus Robinson into our starting lineup. Honestly, Shaheed, I don't see a path for us to get Shaheed into our starting lineup. At what point do you ever start Shaheed over Rome Odunze? I'm sorry, over Malik Neighbors, over Garrett Wilson, over Amon-Ra St. Brown? Who do we think is more long-term upside between Rome Odunze and Shaheed? Probably Rome. So what I would love to do, if it could be an option for us, is I would love to take one of these depth receivers, whether that's Terry, whether that's Shaheed. You're probably going to have better luck doing it with Shaheed. Shaheed's the hot name at the moment. Packaging with either Jordan Mason or Najee Harris to go get a long-term viable RB2, since this is that league where we only start two wide receivers in a flex. Looking at those names, Josh Jacobs would be super appealing, very difficult to get to. Going over, honestly, another thing we could do is if we can move off of the bad offense with Achane and potentially go like Shaheed, Achane, McLaurin, Achane, and pivot over to Breece Hall. I actually would much prefer Breece Hall. I prefer Jahmyr Gibbs based off us projecting out the Lions to be scoring, almost 10 more points a week than what you actually have with Miami going into the future. So I think if we could pivot to Gibbs, that'd be interesting in that 2-for-1 deal. If you wanted to go back to what we're talking about with the Jordan Mason or Najee Harris, we can go like Shaheed and Jordan Mason or Shaheed and Najee. I'd rather sell Najee than Mason, but obviously you got to do what your league mates will. I would love to go up to James Cook if possible. We're not going to be able to get to Kamara. If you can go get Barkley with a combination of Achane and one of those depth receivers, I would do that as well. And if you can't find somebody to buy one of these depth receivers where we can upgrade our running back position for the long term, either pivot from Achane to another elite running back that's going to be in a better offense, such as Bijan, Breece, Barkley, then at that point, or Gibbs, I think at that point you try to pivot from Mason or Najee to go get that long-term viable upgrade, whether that's James Cook, Josh Jacobs. Obviously, we're going to put out a bunch of offers, expecting the majority of them to get rejected, and just see if we have anybody taking the bait. If we can't make that 2-for-1 deal, then honestly, I think we probably just move on from Demarcus Robinson, because specifically in a 10-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex with this wide receiver room, there's no way you could ever hit our starting lineup. I would rather roster another running back like Braylon Allen, where if the starter were to go down in front of him, all of a sudden we know that immediately is a must-start guy. Where even in the case of Robinson, where the starters go down ahead of him, wide receiver, it doesn't work that way. It's not like we can just know that you're a must-start player immediately. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the Flock Support on the channel. I hope that I was able to help you out. Hope you're able to get something from this. And as always, if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me and ask. But let's move this over, and we are going to be mixing in real quick a trade question. This is Zach Charbonnet versus Tyler Algier. It says, just traded Montgomery Debo for Bijan Coleman. We have Jacobs Mason. Well, I love the Bijan side of that. Not even close. But yeah, Charbonnet versus Algier. Even if we have Bijan Robinson, I'd still rather have Zach Charbonnet. I think Charbonnet has a larger role with a healthy starter in front of him. And then we've already seen that if Walker does miss time, Charbonnet sees 100% of this at backfield. And yeah, Bijan's fully healthy. Walker is kind of dealing with an injury. So I think we just go ahead and we take Charbonnet. Okay, so let's move this over to our next trade question. This one's going to be Chase and James Cook versus CeeDee Lamb. The running back could give me a chance to compete. I have Stevenson and Brooks as my top running backs right now. If you have Stevenson and Brooks as your top running backs right now, I don't know if you have an option. I think you have to go ahead. I think you have to take Jamar Chase, James Cook over CeeDee Lamb. Now, obviously, Chase has been absolute garbage. Disgusting. It's been horrendous. Trust me, as somebody who's started Chase, I understand. But I think James Cook is a top 12 running back rest of season. I still think that Jamar Chase is a top 5 wide receiver rest of season. Obviously, Lamb is the wide receiver 1. But still, I'd rather just have Chase here, to be honest. Okay. So we'll get back to Brutus's, but let's get some more roster reviews in. It's coming out from Built Different. Really do appreciate you, my friend. Going to be super excited. Go ahead and check this out. Says, need big advice. We've taken a lot of injuries. Desperately trying to win for the bragging rights. Any advice on trades or I could possibly make in the league? Appreciate it. No, really appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for being a member of the flock. Going to be excited to check this out for you. So this is that Built Different team. We are currently 4th with the league analyzer. I mean, obviously doesn't mean everything. It's definitely better than being at the very bottom, though. Pulling this up, quarterback is not as super solid right now. Definitely do advise, if we have Dak Prescott as our QB1, we want to roster 2 quarterbacks. I guess you can play the matchups between Dak and Rodgers. The issue is Rodgers is just going to give you absolutely nothing at all when it comes to the rushing upside. But Rodgers looked like, I don't want to say prime Rodgers, but Rodgers looked phenomenal last night, right? Like Rodgers did look very, very good. Going over to running back to see if, the thing is we got to see if we can upgrade at quarterback somewhere. Running back, we have Rachaad White, Tony Pollard, Jonathan Brooks, Jerome Ford, Austin Eckler, Blake Corum. So if we're looking at Rachaad White in a full PPR format, I'd be happy to have him as my RB2. To have him as my RB1, I'm nervous. Tony Pollard, I would be happy to have him as my RB3. Have him as my RB2, I'm a little nervous. I know obviously Pollard has looked phenomenal through the first 2 weeks, but it's a very bad Tennessee Titans offense. If you look at the third down usage as well as the 2-minute drill, it does appear that Tajay Spears has this receiving game role. Now, obviously, Spears got injured in the last game, which did open that door for Tony Pollard, but sounds like Spears will not be missing any time. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a little small step backwards for Tony Pollard at this point. Then with Brooks, we have him for the long-term viability. We have Jerome Ford, Austin Eckler, and Blake Corum here as plenty of running back depth. And honestly, as we sit here, this is a situation in which I think that to build around the depth makes a lot of sense just strictly because of how many flex spots you have in this league. If the league analyzer is pulling this correctly, where it is a start 9 format, where we do have a bunch of these skill positional guys we can get into the starting lineup, I actually do really like building around the depth. And this is a situation in which we need the skill positional depth. Because going over to wide receiver, this is a room that would have been insane if we weren't derailed by injuries. Tyreek Hill, obviously still a low in wide receiver 1, high in wide receiver 2 with no Tua. But he was the wide receiver 1 overall with Tua. I do think that we get Tua back this season. Tyreek Hill's still a viable play, just not as exciting. Harrison, wide receiver 1 here. Obviously super exciting. Puka Nacua, missing him is going to be extremely tough. And the wide receiver depth actually matters because of the amount of flex spots that we have here. We have the Justin Herbert injury potentially impacting Quentin Johnston. George Pickens is still stuck in an offense that doesn't have a lot of passing volume to go around. Looking at Leggett, it's been a garbage offense. We have Tolbert, we have Roman Wilson. These bottom 3 receivers are great examples of receivers that aren't worth roster spots in leagues where you only start 2 wide receivers in a flex. However, in leagues where you do have multiple flex spots, it is a situation in which it does make a lot of sense to just go through and roster players that you think could potentially turn into wide receiver 3s, especially if you have the injury to Puka Nacua. Now, I do want to reiterate, for anybody that is potentially playing in a league instead, that you're in a situation in which you only start 2 wide receivers in 1 flex. And that kind of situation, to go through and roster a player that you think can turn into a wide receiver 3, it's not what you want to have at the bottom end of your roster. You'd be way better off instead prioritizing the high-end running backs down there at the bottom end the guys like Braylon Allen, the guys like Kareem Hunt, that if their situations were to change, all of a sudden they could become every week starters for you. But ultimately, I think this is not that format. We have the Puka injury, so these players at the bottom end makes a ton of sense. And I drafted so much Roman Wilson around 18 in Underdog this year that I am praying that Roman Wilson comes out here and does something. Most likely he won't. Most likely it's a very tough spot because you have Fields starting. But I would love to see it. I promise you, I'd love to see it. Now, going over to tight end, we have the tight end 1 in fantasy in Trey McBride. So overall, I think this is a team that if you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, the moves that we need to be making, we need to go ahead and we need to look to potentially upgrade at quarterback. The way that we would do that is we would potentially just take the long-term value that you have with, say, Puka Nacua, sell Puka and Dak, and see if we can go get a true elite level quarterback, such as Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, if it was a league where you start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. If it was that league where you start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, we would also go ahead and move on from these bottom 3 receivers, and we would instead pivot over to some of these higher upside running backs off the waiver wire and just roster significantly more RBs than we are wide receiver. But from what it looks like to me, where this is a situation in which actually you can get a ton of players in this lineup, we have a decent amount of flex spots. Here instead, I actually think that you are chilling and we actually want to go ahead and we want to leave this team as is and really just hope that we get Puka Nacua back soon, my friend. But I really do appreciate you and hope that I was able to help you out in some way. But yeah, I think you've already done a great job of optimizing for this format that you play in. If it was a different format, obviously there'd be dramatic changes that would need to be made. But let's move this over to Clutchbox. Happy to see you. Long time member of the flock. This is Marty McBride saying, hey, Mason, was just wondering what kind of moves you think we can make to get the team better. Currently, we're sitting at 0-2. We recently traded Etienne, London, Shaheed for Jacobs, JT, Powell. Etienne to Jacobs upgrade, London to JT upgrade, Shaheed for Pickens upgrade. This is also going to be a tight end premium formats. So, one, my guy, you absolutely robbed the man on that. Actually, this is a dynasty league. Never mind. I was reading it as if it was a redraft format. Shaheed, Pickens upgrade in dynasty. Etienne to Jacobs, kind of a lateral move. And that's actually the age is probably right there about the same. Knowing that Jacobs came out at 20, Etienne stayed in school through his senior year. But the London to JT isn't as clear as an upgrade as it is in redraft, of course. But looking at the squad right now, it's a 12-team start 9 2 QB format. So here, if it's a 2 QB format where you only start 9 guys, quarterback is going to be a massive deal. Quarterback's going to make up a massive percentage of our starting lineup output from a week-to-week perspective. Currently at quarterback, we have the cornerstone asset. Oh, you're saying it's redraft. Okay. Thank God you let me know that. If it's redraft, then 100% we love the move, my friend. Love the move. Can you confirm that it is a 2 quarterback format, though? I'm assuming it is a 2 QB format. Maybe this is a super flex keeper format. There's no other reason we'd be rostering Mason Rudolph if this was not a super flex league. So yeah, 2 quarterback league. So can you let me know, did you manually put that it was a dynasty league just so you could tag it as 2 quarterbacks? Because that'd be very good to know in the future, my friend. Okay. Or maybe we're just pulling it as if it's dynasty because it's a keeper league. Just so I can make sure that we don't have that mistake where it's tagged dynasty and it's redraft again. So maybe it's getting tagged that because it's a keeper. But yeah, looking at these overalls, these are not the overalls for regular redraft leagues. These are specifically for dynasty super flex. And we can tell right now, I'm sorry to do this, but we need to, I've been keeping up to date with my rest of season ranks strongly, but we need to really go through and do an overhaul with the dynasty ranks as well. But anyway, okay, Clutchbox says it auto did that. Okay, perfect. So it's probably just auto doing that for keepers. Good to know. But moving this over, quarterback, we have A-Rich and Geno. I think A-Rich is still safe play as a QB1 rest of season. I think Geno is a safe play as a QB2 here as well. Obviously, it'd be nice to have a starting QB3, especially with Anthony Richardson's playing style, but it's not the end of the world, and we don't feel like we need to go out there and trade for that additional quarterback until you were to potentially have an injury to one of those top guys. Okay. Going over to running back, we are currently sitting with Achane, Taylor, and Jacobs. So looking at this from a redraft perspective, RB1. We have 3 running back ones on this roster. Sitting here with 3 RB1s puts us in a phenomenal situation. Clearly selling Drake London for Jonathan Taylor is something that we didn't need to do, where at running back, we're already kind of loaded. We have the depth with Warren, Eckler, and Raheem Mostert as well. And given the fact that we have the 3 anchors at the very top, obviously, if we could approach one of these teams that has a garbage running back room and potentially package them together, say Jaylen Warren and one of our wide receivers to go get that wide receiver upgrade, I think that would be extremely interesting. Now, the issue is obviously with Warren, Eckler, and Raheem Mostert, none of these guys are holding a ton of value right now. So we probably are just going to have to be waiting until hopefully we get a spike week from one of those players. But going over to receiver, we have Tank Dell, who I didn't draft a lot this year, but I actually do think is going to be much better going into the future than what he's been through the first 2 weeks. If we look at the target share, if you look at the amount of routes that he's running, he actually has a larger role in this offense than I was initially expecting in terms of just the snaps he's playing, the amount of routes that he is running as well. We have Keon Coleman for the long-term upside. Keon Coleman, first game as a Bill, second game as a Bill, he runs the most routes of any wide receiver on the team. I think that's very encouraging for the long term. We have Pickens as a viable wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. We have Jameson as a viable wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. The main issue is this wide receiver room doesn't have an alpha, right? We don't have a wide receiver 1. It's okay when we have 3 running back 1s. We can deal with it. But yeah, this is one of the very rare instances where I think it actually makes sense to potentially sell some of this running back depth with a wide receiver to go get that wide receiver upgrade. I know a lot of people have been looking at Pickens as somebody that's going to be much better going into the future. I understand that he had a tough matchup this past week. I understand he has a couple interference calls. I know that things could have broken differently, but still going into the future, just looking at the projections that you have pretty much every single week for the passing volume here in Pittsburgh, I do think it's going to be tough for George Pickens. Where if you're looking at this, I actually didn't even want to pull up Pickens, but he has a higher, lower 8.15. This is what I want to see. Why did they take this down? Maybe it's because the Justin Herbert injury. But yeah, yes, as of yesterday, Justin Fields had like a higher, lower 163.5 passing yards. Just the passing volume's not necessarily there, which does make it just an extremely difficult projection for George Pickens in the long term. So if we could potentially take, say, Jaylen Warren and Pickens and go get that wide receiver upgrade, take Eckler and Pickens and go get that wide receiver upgrade, I think that could make sense. But the main thing is we're just going to have to wait a little bit of time and hopefully get one of these running backs with a short little pop. And obviously things will change. You know this. I know, obviously, man, you know better than I do that. If you were to have an injury to Najee, then all of a sudden what I'm saying, you throw it out the window, situation's completely different. But assuming that these running backs kind of stay in the similar situations that they're in now, and all of a sudden you get a long 60-yard touchdown for Jaylen Warren, but the fundamental usage hasn't changed beyond that, I think we would love to go and try to get that upgrade at wide receiver back to a wide receiver 1. But yeah, that Taylor deal was just way too good for you not to take. The league analyzer here, completely ignore it. It's pulling in dynasty values, not redraft values. I think it's a phenomenal team based off the running back situation we have. And we also have the tight end 1 in fantasy right now in Trey McBride. So overall, I think you're in a phenomenal situation, my friend. I don't necessarily think that there's too much that I would do here outside of waiting for one of these potential running backs to pop and then seeing if we can sell them with the receiver for an alpha wide receiver 1. But really do appreciate you and hope I was able to help you out in some way, my friend. Now let's move this over to Snubs, longtime member of the flock. Team name Hawk Tua here. This is the second team with the league analyzer. It doesn't matter if we're second or first. It's tomato, right? The values are right there, pretty much neck and neck. It's a double flex format. We got Lamb in a trade for Nico and JK. Absolutely love that deal, my friend. Thoughts on the team and future potential moves. So here, since it's a full PPR format where we can start up to 4 wide receivers from week to week perspective, wide receiver is definitely going to be a little more important than it would be otherwise. Going over to quarterback, we are currently sitting with just Goff. Obviously, if Tua is not on the IR in your league, like if you don't have an IR slot, I will say at that point, you just go ahead and you drop Tua. Even if that means we end up having to change our name, it is what it is. But if Tua's on the IR, we're chilling. And if Tua's on the IR, I actually wouldn't mind you rostering his second quarterback with Jared Goff and just kind of playing the matchups between the two. Obviously, if you are looking at Goff, this is a quarterback that should be in a very high-scoring passing offense. But the fundamental issue that I would have is just the inability to give you the rushing upside. Now, going over to running back, you currently are sitting with Kyren Williams. Kyren is a potential sell-high candidate for me, just given the fact that you have 5 offensive linemen on the IR currently for the Los Angeles Rams. At the same time, you are currently dealing with the Puka Nacua as well as the Cooper Kupp injuries, which I think this is going to put you in a very difficult situation in terms of trying to project out this offense to ever be a one that's near the top of the NFL in total points scored. Obviously, Stafford is a straight up stud, but I mean, you can only do so much here. Going over to what we have with the depth, we have Aaron Jones, we have Najee Harris. So we definitely have a running back too that we can play from week to week perspective. But let's go and let's explore some of these running back rooms and see if there's anybody with a stud with lack of depth. Like if you could pivot from Kyren and Najee to like Gibbs and Ramondre, I think that'd be a no-brainer. I would even go from I would love to upgrade from Kyren to Gibbs, and I'd be willing to downgrade from Najee to Javonte to get that done. Obviously, the issue with Javonte, I think Javonte actually has a better workload in his backfield than Najee does in his if you're looking at market share numbers. Just the Broncos offense is garbage. But obviously, that's a downgrade, but it's not a player that we're starting anyway. It's just a desperate depth piece. And I think you pivot over to a running back that's in a much better situation. So going through and looking at this, I would love to make that move as well. Go Kyren and Najee. I'd even be willing to go Kyren and Aaron Jones to Saquon Barkley and Zach Moss, if possible. This team has DeAndre Swift. It's their RB2. Maybe they're panicking. Maybe we can go Kyren and Najee straight up for Breece Hall. I think that would be super interesting as well. I mean, obviously, this is a team that kind of needs some running back depth. And we're not expecting all these teams to be jumping at the bit to make that trade, right? But, I mean, we can at least put out the feelers and see if they have any feedback on that. And then Singletary, Blake Corum, fine depth pieces. Obviously with Corum, pretty much just the handcuff for Kyren Williams. Now going over to wide receiver, we currently are sitting with Lamb as well as Amon-Ra St. Brown. So we are sitting here with 2 top 5 wide receivers rest of season. Absolutely love to see it. The anchors, it's a league where we can start 4 wide receivers as well. So we have Higgins in there for one of the flex spots. And then Jalen Waddle, obviously Waddle, the expectations are that he's just going to be significantly worse over the next month or so as we have no Tua here. But hopefully when we do get Tua back in, all of a sudden Jalen Waddle is an exciting player for the flex spots yet again. But it's a wide receiver room. That's great. We have the top end studs. I'm fine with us rostering 5 guys here. You can start 4 of them from a week to week perspective. Going over to tight ends, we have Dalton Kincaid. I think Kincaid's going to be much better going into the future. I think you only have to roster 1 tight end there. Definitely would not look to sell Kincaid. So really, I think it's a super strong team. The only thing that I could possibly say is if you could potentially move over from, say, the Kyren Najee pairing and upgrade to a bona fide stud running back over Kyren Williams, where you don't have the same offensive concerns, while at the same time, just be willing to downgrade from Najee Harris or give up Najee Harris just as a throw-in. I think that would be very interesting, and this team has enough depth to get it done and can afford it now that we have T. Higgins back in the lineup. But thank you again, my friend. I really hope that I was able to help you out in some way here. Really hope that you're able to get something from this. But let's move this over to our next question coming out from Brutus. It says, last one, and I'll leave you alone for the night. The guy wanted Charbonnet in the deal for Metcalf and Swift. I told him I would only add Sharp if he made it Collins instead. So looking at Walker, Charbonnet versus Swift and Nico Collins, this is Nico Collins by a country mile. I'd rather have DeAndre Swift or Charbonnet. I'd way rather have Nico Collins over Kenneth Walker. And in terms of Metcalf, I maybe would do it for Metcalf, but I would for sure do it for Nico. Okay. Sal Perazzi coming out with a trade question. Says, other running backs are James Cook, Raheem Mostert. Wide receivers, we have Jefferson, Debo, Worthy, and Keenan. So Garrett Wilson versus Jalen Waddle. Give me Garrett Wilson. Obviously, this is a tough situation. If you're telling me Mostert is our other running back, so whoever we get here between Kyron and Ramadre is somebody that we're having to start both these players regardless. Can y'all please spam the chat? Would you rather have the Kyron or Ramadre side of this? Would you rather have Kyron and Waddle or Ramadre and Wilson? Kyron and Waddle or Ramadre and Wilson? And please also, it looks like we are less than 10 subscribers away from hitting 242,000 subs. So if you have not done so already, hit that like button. I'm sure everybody here is subscribed, but maybe if you drop the like, we'll get recommended to somebody who's not. But Kyron, Wilson, Kyron. It does look like pretty much everybody is on the Kyron Williams side. So yeah, maybe we go ahead and you take Kyron. Yeah. I'm worried about Kyron in the short term because I think the offense is going to be bad. I'm worried about Waddle in the short term because I think the offense is going to be bad. But at least you have the long-term upside for those offenses to get better when injuries are a little bit different. But let's move over and let's actually pivot over to some of the free questions in the chat real quick. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Would be super excited to try to get to them. Josh says Pat's offense is cooked. Waddle will bounce back. Yeah, what pisses me off is I had Ramadre Stevenson just because at the time I bought him, it was perceived to be a really cheap cost. And I thought I would be able to flip Ramadre Stevenson. And every single week, saying, oh yeah, Ramadre's sell high guy. And then I'd go to the Flock League, try to freaking sell the guy. And nobody would buy him from me. And we get to see the Pats offense implode in prime time, which it's always embarrassing if one of your players lays a goose egg that's on your roster. The rest of the league gets to laugh at you. But when it is prime time, it is just so much worse because it's on the stage. You get to take the heat from everybody in the league. Invader says Gibbs Waddle for Nico. I'd rather have Gibbs over Nico Collins straight up. I mean, Nico's obviously absolutely crushing it. But Jahmyr Gibbs is still an elite RB. Jahmyr Gibbs is still sitting here with a massive role as a receiver. Or running behind one of the best O-lines in the NFL. Miguelito says, is Gabe Davis the wide receiver one in Jacksonville? Couple different things. One, Gabe Davis was the best value wide receiver in underdog drafts this year. I think in your regular redraft league, doesn't matter, to be honest with you. I don't know if he has the ceiling too. But in underdog drafts, if I can get in that time machine, go back and tell myself what to do, I'd say only draft Gabe Davis in this offense. Now, in terms of who has the highest ceiling and who I would rather have in your regular fantasy football league, regardless of cost, it's Brian Thomas. I know, yes, Gabe Davis has been running the most routes, but Brian Thomas Jr. is a rookie. And 2 games in, he is already flashing the top end ceiling for us. The best ever says, what do you think about Kareem Hunt right now? Sounds like Kareem Hunt's not going to be playing on Sunday. Despite that, I do think that Kareem Hunt is worth the roster spot. If I was a betting man, I would be in on Carson Steele over the other running backs in this backfield. I don't necessarily think that's the most unique take in the world. I definitely think Kareem Hunt coming in, Kareem Hunt has the chance to be the guy. So I think Hunt should be rostered. I honestly think Steele should be rostered. Pirine should be rostered. Hunt should be rostered. But with the amount of running backs that are attached to this situation, The reality is, what probably happens is the Chiefs spread it out. They look to throw the ball with aggression, and no running backs in KC are viable. Okay. Let's move this over. Jacob says, am I crazy to start Jameson over Travis Etienne this week? You are freaking nuts if you do this. Obviously, Jameson has been much better, but let's just come back down to reality for a second. Go over, look at the projections on Underdog, and you can literally take these if you want. If you think that these are so wrong, you can go and take them. Jameson's higher, lower, 52.5 receiving yards. Jameson's higher, lower, 10.05 points. If we're looking at Travis Etienne, Etienne's up at 78.5 total yards. Etienne's more likely to score the touchdown. Travis Etienne's at 12.55 points. Obviously, Jameson looked very, very good this past week. And I know some people are upset with us only ranking him as a low and wide receiver too. But the main thing is, this is a situation in which Jared Goff had 55 pass attempts last week. Do I think that's going to happen again? No, I do not. No, I do not. And actually, I noticed on Underdog, we need to take this 35% profit boost before it goes. We actually have two of them. Cool. We're going to take both right now. I actually like that Brandon Ayuk scored a touchdown this week with absolutely nobody in this situation. Going through and trying to find something else that appeals to us. I actually wouldn't mind the Nico Collins. Please spam the chat if you see anything that looks interesting to you. I actually kind of like Jefferson to have 80.5 receiving yards. Or maybe we just go touchdowns. Maybe we go Jefferson, have a touchdown. And then go with... get some Darnold correlation in here. Go Sam Darnold higher than 231.5 passing yards. You have no Addison, so I'm a little bit worried about that with Darnold's. But I think that bumps up Jefferson. So we're going to put 15. Obviously, this is very unlikely to hit. Just make sure everybody knows this. But it's $15 to win $159. The reason for this is we are using the 35% profit boost on it. So 15 to win 159. Like I said, I am up $300. I think actually we maybe lost the $10, $15 one last night. So I think we're up like $280 right now in Underdog picks this season. And really the only reason is, I'm completely honest with you, I'm not good at them, is because I take advantage of the promos. Like the promos are like limited time, so you have to make sure that you're kind of checking in to use them. But let's find another one that we like, because the 35% profit boost is kind of too good to pass up on, to be honest. Maybe we have a little pick'em slip that says that the Dallas game is a higher scoring game than people want to assume. Maybe we say that we get some more routes run from Isaiah Likely this week in comparison to what we had in the past. And then we can go ahead and look for a Dak. So Dak, they have higher, lower, 1.5 passing touchdowns. What do they have Zeke at? They have Zeke 30. They have Zeke at 8.5 rushing attempts. We're going to go Zeke to have 7.35 fantasy points in this game. So we're going to use the 35% profit boost. It's going to be 15 to win 88. We need Lamar to have 217.5 passing yards, likely 31.5 receiving yards. Zeke, 7.35 pass attempts. Okay. And let's move this over. That's 15 to win about 90. So definitely unlikely, but I don't hate our odds there. So let's move this over. Joshua says, would you trade Sutton and Rome for Keon Coleman? No, I would not. I think you make an argument to have Rome over Keon straight up. And they'd have Rome over Keon straight up. Okay, Rocky Ron says, should I start Aaron Jones or Zamir White or Jameson? So Zamir actually has a very good matchup this week. I am not that excited to go with him, however. Sorry, I'm just thinking here. I think the floor plays Aaron Jones. The ceiling plays Jamison Williams. The thing with Zamir White is while it's a great matchup and I do expect them to run the ball a little bit more, at the same time, Zamir doesn't have the receiving upside himself. Okay. Luminate says Akers or Najee to start this week. I would go Cam Akers. I think Akers is in a better offense. I think Akers has a really strong role here. And Najee is effectively splitting this backfield 50-50 with Jalen Warren. Okay. Let's move this over. Lemonade says, got Chase for Mike Evans straight up. We can go this season. That is an absolute steal, my friend. This is why occasionally I will throw in like those bona fide studs that are having a couple down weeks into the buy low videos. As well, I know that most leagues, obviously, there's no way that you can sell Mike Evans for Jamar Chase. There's a group of y'all that are playing in leagues where you can. I definitely want y'all, if y'all have the ability to make a move like that, to go ahead and take advantage. Okay. Let's move this over. Brian says Jameson and Rashee or Tyreek Hill. I think in the short term, I would rather have Rashee Rice straight up over Tyreek. Now, obviously, in the long term, if your assumption is that we are going to end up getting back in Tua into this offense, then things do change a bit. If you have Tua back in, I probably do. I probably just go Tyreek Hill. Now, of course, I'm an idiot, but I think Tyreek can be the wide receiver one overall rest of season. Maybe if it's a multiple flex league where the depth actually does matter here a bit, then at that point, we take the two viable receivers. But if it's a two wide receiver, one flex league, then we just go ahead. Then we just get Tyreek. Okay. So 10 team, one flex. If it's a 10 team, one flex, give me the best player. Give me Tyreek. But let's move over. I know we have some more trade questions that we need to get to on the site. So, of course, if y'all wanted to purchase a trade question, start set question, roster review, you can do all of that through flockfantasy.com. You can find that link in the description, or you can just type in flockfantasy.com. It's easy. But definitely the cheapest way to get a team review, of course, is taking advantage of that offer that we have with Underdog, where you can see that I believe we are now up about, let's see, I need to do the math again. Looks like we lost 45 in the game last night. I think we were up to 95 so far, because you can see a lot of these are refunded, like refunded $5. And that's the reason we are taking advantage of those promos, like I was saying. But anyway, if you wanted to check these out over on Underdog, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section. And if you use promo code FLOCK, you are going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you are going to be getting a free team review in one of these live streams, a CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half total yard. The only reason I'm up on Underdog picks because I'm taking advantage of the promos, and the Patrick Mahomes free pick as well, more than less than half a total yard. If you're brand new to Underdog, so you get 2 free picks, bunch of promos, and a free team review on the site as well. But let's go ahead. I think this is a start sit question that we have from C. Peterson. This is St. Brown, Smith at wide receiver. Really, at running back, we are looking at Walker, Chase Brown, Braylon Allen, Raheem, Jonathan Brooks. Saying, obviously, if Walker plays, we play him. Okay, should I drop somebody or just wait for the week to play out? Honestly, I think that, obviously, it sounds like Walker's going to play. We would go Walker. Mostert's going to be out. Brooks going to be out. So, I mean, it seems very straightforward where if Walker plays, we go Walker. If not, you go Chase Brown. To be honest with you, I think I wouldn't drop any of these running backs to find a pivot option either. Because, like, what are you going to have on the way? I mean, if Cam Akers is out there, then, yeah, drop Chase Brown and play Cam Akers. But, I mean, if it's like, oh, do I pick up Samaje Perine and play Perine instead? It's like, I don't know. I think Brown probably has a little more upside rest of the season. Logan says Walker's out. Last I read, well, one, we saw that Walker was doubtful. And then the updated report was the coaching staff was actually hopeful that Kenneth Walker was going to play. The last report I read sounded positive on Kenneth Walker as a couple hours ago. But let me go ahead and let me pull this back up. Yeah, the last report as of 6 hours ago is I'm a head coach, optimistic, Kenneth Walker will play week 4. Oh, never mind. I misread it. It's week 4. This is week 3. So Kenneth Walker's going to miss this week. You play Chase Brown. And if instead you need to pivot over to a waiver wire running back, if Akers is available, you 100% go ahead and grab him. But yeah, I'm sorry for the confusion. Yeah, I said like at the very beginning of the live stream, it's like, oh, they said he was doubtful, but then the coach said he was hopeful that he'd play. I wasn't smart enough to read that. He said that he was hopeful he'd play in week 4. This is coming out from Compton Ace. Happy to see us. Says, hey, Mason, loving the site, brother. The team is Goff, Jacobs, Mason, London, Rice, McBride, Montgomery. The bench, we have CMC, Dobbins. Honestly, my guy, if it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, I'd rather have McCaffrey than Kupp. Especially knowing that you can't put Kupp on the IR right now. Blake Corum makes no difference in this deal for me. I think that the Niners will for sure be in it. I think that they will be incentivized to get CMC back in as fast as possible. So then we're for sure going to go ahead. We're going to take CMC over Cooper Kupp. Don't have to debate that too much. Now, Gloom coming out with a start sit question says, I never knew who to start with all these injuries. So I am an idiot. Full transparency. I would play Chris Olave over Shaheed. Between Higgins, Diggs, DJ Moore, I think you go DJ Moore. Keenan is out. Looks like Kittle's doubtful, so we're going to have to go with Isaiah Likely. And then for the flex, between Pollard, Diggs, Higgins, with Spears banged up a bit, maybe you expect that Pollard does have that expanded role. So I think you can go Pollard. Diggs would be the pivot option for you if you wanted to go elsewhere. Can y'all spam the chat? Would y'all rather have Stephon Diggs or Tony Pollard in your lineup this week? Under the assumption that Tajay Spears plays. Obviously, if Spears were to miss, then it's a very easy situation where you just go ahead and you just take Tony Pollard. Diggs, Pollard, Diggs, Pollard, 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 Pollard. Diggs, Pollard, Diggs, Diggs, Pollard. Diggs, Pollard, Diggs. Yeah, I mean, if Spears is out, it's Pollard easily. I'm expecting Spears to play. I think really that's the conversation that you have to have with yourself here, my friend. But yeah, of course, if Spears is out, please, for the love of God, go Pollard. But you may go Pollard regardless. Now, Chubby Rooster coming out says, hey, is this a good trade? And if they reject it, should I try to get Chase with Coleman and Smith? Yeah, I would way rather have Jamar Chase here. And honestly, I probably would rather have Chase over Smith and Coleman straight up. Obviously, Smith is in a smash spot with no A.J. Brown over the next few weeks. But I still expect that Chase is that top 5 wide receiver rest of season. It looks like this may be a 10-team league. So give me Chase. And yeah, I think honestly, if they go, hey, no Addison, then sure, take Addison out of it. Now, Tommy coming out says, are we going to go Kyron or McCaffrey? I think you have to go Kyron right now with the uncertainty of McCaffrey. Maybe if you do this deal next week where we are a little bit closer to McCaffrey return, we can do it. Okay. Now, that Morris kid coming out saying, started 2-0, got offered ETN for DK. What are your thoughts? Other running backs are CMC, Mason, Montgomery, Braylon Allen. Other wide receivers are Malik, St. Brown, Brian Thomas Jr., Jaden Reed. Love the concept, my guy. Much love, my friend. Here, I actually think on a CMC build where we are starting Montgomery as our RB2 right now, if this is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, I would rather have Travis Etienne over DK Metcalf. With Etienne, I understand he has been disappointing through the first 2 weeks. The entire Jags offense hasn't looked great. I mean, this entire Jags team hasn't. They are currently sitting at 0-2. But I don't think that this is a garbage team forever going into the future. I think that they will be better. Okay. So let's move this over to our next question. This one's coming out from Slush Monkey. This is Aaron Jones versus Drake London. I would rather have Drake London over Aaron Jones rest of season. I expect that the Falcons offense is a better offense than Minnesota. Obviously, that has not been the case so far. And then also, if you are looking at Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler does have a role in this offense. And while Darnell Mooney's been great in Atlanta, he's been doing so with very limited volume. I think that London's the guy for me. Okay. Now, Useful Goose says, Worthy or Moss for the flex this week? So this is a loaded up team where we have Chase, Harrison, Andrews, Achane, Gibbs, Richardson, Rashee Rice in one of the flex spots. If that's the case where we are just absolutely loaded here, I'm going to go with the high floor player. Zach Moss is playing like 90% of the snaps currently in Cincinnati. Obviously, Worthy is more that boom bust. I just want to make sure we don't get 0 points. Because, I mean, if you're coming out and you're able to score 5 points with Zach Moss, GG, your league mate. Like, you're easily winning this. Gavin says, pretty set on my positions. Just curious if you would change anything. And also the final flex. Much love. Thank you for being a long time member of the flock, my friend. This is at wide receiver. The best play would be Amari Cooper to get in. Obviously, we're not playing Amari over Lamb or Collins. Running back, the best play would be Aaron Jones. We're not playing him over Achane or Etienne. And in terms of what we would be doing here in the flex, I do think you take the floor of Aaron Jones. It's a matchup against Houston that honestly, I would have expected that Houston would be favored by like 4 or 5 points. But it is surprising to see that sportsbooks are giving the Minnesota Vikings a lot of credit here. And the spread on this game is only like 2 points last I checked. But let's go over to the next question. This is a team that we've looked at earlier in the year. Going to be excited to check it out again for you. This is Ty Chicks. Got Diggs. Now, definitely recognize the team name. Maybe this is a different team name. I mean, maybe this is a different person, same team name. But anyway, it's a 10-team start 7 format. So still, will reiterate, this is that league where wide receiver depth does not matter. What we need to be doing is optimizing around the elite quarterback, the elite tight ends. Hopefully, running back is a strength, and wide receiver making 2-for-1 deals to upgrade elsewhere when we get the ability to. But going ahead, pulling this up at quarterback, we have the QB1. So obviously, super excited to see that. Going over to what we have at RB, we have Devon Achane, a locked and loaded top 10 running back. Will be even better when we get Tua back in. We have Brooks for the long term here. We have Javonte, Carson Steele, Zamir White, Rico Dowdle, Cam Akers. So this is what I love to see in that league where you only have 2 wide receivers, 1 flex. Where we are just sitting here and we are just rostering a ridiculous amount of running backs. That way, if an injury were to occur, then all of a sudden we are in a situation in which, yes, we can take advantage and we have players that we can be immediately jamming into this starting lineup. Like looking at this, we can possibly start Steele this week. We can possibly start Akers this week. I would probably rather start Akers over Steele because you have no Dameon Pierce here in Houston. But yeah, I mean, Akers does slide into our RB2 slot. So while our RB2 is generally weak, when we are rostering this many players, there's a chance that we can just kind of go back and forth between these options from a week-to-week perspective. Now, going over and looking at what we have at wide receiver. We currently have Lamb, Chase, Debo. So, I mean, we have the elite level options at the top. We have the anchors. So, because it's that 2 wide receiver and 1 flex league, this is like the opposite situation in which here we don't need to be rostering the wide receiver depth, right? Where we don't have that solid RB2, we're going to be rostering as many running backs as possible. Here, when we have elite wide receiver 1s, we don't need to be rostering too many receivers. When we are rostering wide receivers, the guys that we would prefer to pay attention to would be the high upside guys, such as Xavier Worthy, such as Brian Thomas Jr. The players that in terms of how you project them out right this second, maybe it's not super, super exciting, but for the long term, it can be a spot that we are comfortable with. So I love this wide receiver room. I mean, if we ever had the ability, like after week 1, say for instance, Xavier Worthy was that sell high guy for me after the first big week against the Ravens. And then we can potentially go ahead and we can sell Xavier Worthy with like Javonte Williams or Jonathan Brooks. And then at that point, tier up to go get that top end running back that we can feel very comfortable about. And that's definitely something that we look to do. But at the same time, whenever you're sitting here and when we're looking at these guys right now, Worthy's prices come back down to earth a bit. His situation's actually improved with Hollywood Brown being out for the season. So I honestly am not nearly as interested in potentially going out there and selling him. So overall, great wide receiver. I mean, there's a reason we are so far ahead of the rest of the league with the league analyzer here, right? We go over to tight end. We have Kyle Pitts. I think Pitts will be better going into the future in comparison to what he has been. Now, of course, the question is, well, how much better is he actually going to be? That I don't know, but he is playing significantly more snaps. He is running significantly more routes than what we ended up seeing last season. So I think you still have some hope here for Kyle Pitts. I think going back to what we're talking about with these wide receivers, especially once you get Deebo Samuel back in, like say Deontay Johnson pops with Andy Dalton under center, and then all of a sudden people think that Deontay is going to be viable going into the future. If you could potentially go ahead and sell like Deontay and Pitts to just pivot over and go get a tight end upgrade, then obviously we would. If you can go pivot to somebody like Bowers, pivot to somebody like McBride, it's kind of a no-brainer. But the issue is we're just simply not going to be able to do that right now. So we would need to see that pop from one of those depth receivers. But when one of those depth receivers does pop, I think that's the move you look to make. Is trying to make them add on in that 2-for-1 deal to go get the upgrade at tight end. But again, it's a phenomenal team. I'm stretching, trying to come up with anything that I can for it, my friend. You're so far ahead of everybody else in this league with the league analyzer. I think you're in a phenomenal spot. And yeah, of course, if there's anything else I can ever help you with, don't hesitate to reach out and let me know. But really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way. Now, going over to Code's question says, could be a tank breakout game, but Keon has a great matchup as well. Not sure who to start at the flex. Okay, so going ahead and looking at this. So we're considering Tank Dell. We also have Jaden Reed, Keon Coleman. I would for sure be going Tank Dell over Keon Coleman. How I rank this if Jordan Love does not play. Tank Dell, Keon Coleman, then Jaden Reed. Now, if Jordan Love does play, then at that point, Jaden Reed and Tank Dell are extremely close. It is a lot tougher in that instance. I still probably end up going with Tank Dell. If you look at what we've had from Dell so far this season, the underlying usage actually has been extremely strong. It does look like Tank Dell is that guy that you can pretty much count on starting just each and every week. Obviously, if we get another just absolute goose egg from him, then we definitely are going to have to walk that back a bit. But, I mean, the targets are there. I still think that CJ Stroud is an elite level talent. And if he is going to continue to look his way, I think you're fine with it. Now, we're going to go over and check this team out for Fisher. This team is the Garrett Wilson lover. Much love, my friend. Much love. Happy to see you coming out. Says, made a few trades already. My one concern is I'm starting Kincaid at the flex, trying to shop him along with someone else on the bench for an upgrade. Any ideas? Okay. So let's go ahead and let's move this over. So one thing that I want to address is the fact that this is a league where you can start up to 4 wide receivers from week to week perspective, and it's a 12-team format. So the wide receiver depth is going to matter in this league in particular. And on top of it, if we are looking at this squad, this is a situation in which we are so far ahead of the rest of the league with this league analyzer currently. Like, it is not even remotely close from us compared to the next team. And I'm sure that we're about to see that second that we pull this up. And yeah, the reason is these studs that we have at the top. But yeah, starting off at quarterback, I mean, we are sitting with an elite level QB1. We don't need a roster at backup. We have Jalen Hurts. You're able to start Hurts every single week, regardless of matchup. Don't need a backup, especially in a league where we can start 4 wide receivers from week to week perspective. Then I think that we're completely fine, and we love Jalen Hurts. Now, moving over to what we have at running back. We're currently sitting with Bijan and Gibbs. So we have 2 running back 1 anchors. And this is going to give us a lot of flexibility throughout the rest of the roster. Like, you're not necessarily having to concern yourself with, oh, I don't have a solid running back 2, so I need to roster 7 running backs, you know. Like, obviously, it's nice to have guys like Braylon Allen, Cam Akers, Tyler Algier, or if a starter were to go down in front of them, then all of a sudden they're extremely appealing. But it's not necessarily a necessity. So running back, by far and away the best running back room in this league. Having Bijan and Gibbs on the same team is a straight up cheat code. Now going over to wide receiver, we have Nico Wilson Flowers. So we have arguably 2 wide receiver 1s. I still have Garrett Wilson as that borderline top 12 option. Obviously Collins is looking more like a top 10 option at this point. Zay Flowers is an extremely strong wide receiver 3 for a team. Like, Flowers is kind of that borderline. He's my wide receiver 2. I'm okay with it, but I'm not excited. He's my wide receiver 3. I'm freaking pumped. Going down to the depth, we have Quentin Johnston. I have a lot of Quentin Johnston in underdog drafts, but that was just because he was going to like wide receiver 75. And there, I was like, okay, if he turns into a wide receiver 3 on an uncertain depth chart, maybe this can be a viable pick. And your regular fantasy football league, like if you're having to submit a starting lineup every single week, I don't necessarily know what the upside truly is, especially now that we have the injury to Justin Herbert. Going down to the depth beyond it, we have Josh Downs. We have Ricky Pearsall. I have a ton of Ricky Pearsall in underdog drafts as well. I mean, my guy, if this, I really hope that you end up getting some of these depth receivers to pop. It helped me a ton. But in reality, right, these are just long shots. These are just wide receiver fill-ins that we're going to continue to turn the bottom end of the team with guys like Jordan Whittington, Josh Downs. And then going over to tight end, we have a ton of tight end value. These guys aren't producing. They're valuable, though. We have Laporta and Kincaid. Now, to be honest with you, I never like having 2 top tight ends on the same team, right? I definitely think that a tight end like Kincaid, the reason that he is extremely valuable in fantasy is not necessarily because of his raw points, but it will be his raw point projection going into the future in comparison to the rest of the tight end position. So I don't know if I am looking at this. I 100% agree with you that in this league where you can start up to 4 wide receivers from week to week perspective, with how it stands currently, that maybe you have one of these tight ends in your flex spot. The long-term move that you were wanting to make is we were wanting to sell one of these tight ends for a wide receiver. We were wanting to go sell Dalton Kincaid for a wide receiver, like maybe, well, let's just go ahead and let's see what tight ends, teams with garbage tight ends are looking like. This team is Gesicki. I'd love to sell Kincaid for Olave. Maybe even Kincaid for Metcalf. And go and give this team an access to a real tight ends. This team has Ferguson and Kmet. We actually need to possibly move up Ferguson in our rest of season rankings. Let me go ahead and see where we have Ferguson currently. We have Ferguson 9. We're going to keep him there. But yeah, I mean, this team could use another tight end. If we could offer them Kincaid and pivot over to DJ Moore, that makes a lot of sense. But the issue that you have with these tight ends is people are probably not willing to trade for them, given the fact that through the first 2 weeks, they have done legitimately nothing at all. So if you're looking, I'm making a move right now. I think the move is, my guy, you have a way better team than anybody else here. Let's not panic. Let's not make a trade and lose out on value for no reason. Let's wait to see if one of these tight ends pop. If they do, then at that point, we look to sell one for a receiver. Honestly, this week, it's not going to be a tough spot because here you can start Bijan, Gibbs, at running back. We can start Nico Wilson at receiver. Flowers wide receiver or slash flex. And then the other flex spot, we go ahead and we put Cam Akers. You have no mix-in. And then hopefully we get a pop from a tight end. We can sell him high next week for a receiver. And then the team obviously is already kind of loaded up here as of now. It could be even better going to the future. But really do appreciate you, my friend. Really hope I was able to help you out in some way. But this team is absolutely way better than mine. So I'm sorry. I'm probably not qualified to give you advice on it. Now, but let's move this over to the next squad. It says, I don't know what to do with the flex. Running back room is crap. It is a shallow super flex league. Thanks. No, thank you, my friend. Looking at the flex, Waddle obviously is an absolute no-brainer play with Tua. Without Tua, it is much, much tougher. I understand where you're coming from, considering Brian Thomas Jr., considering Khalil Shakir. I still think we probably played Jalen Waddle here at wide receiver. I'm sorry, at the flex. It's not super exciting. Yeah, we definitely want Jalen Warren there at running back. But yeah, this is a tough spot to be in. But our next question, Mark a Word, the longest member of the, I don't say the longest, but been with us forever. Much love, my guy. Really do appreciate you. You know that. Here we're looking at Carson Steele versus Zamir White. Zamir White has a phenomenal matchup going up against Carolina. Also, if you look at the underlying usage, Zamir White actually was very involved last week from a snaps perspective. The issue is this team just simply did not run the ball at all. In a much better matchup going up against Carolina, I probably end up taking Zamir White here, but I think it's extremely close between Zamir and Carson Steele. We'll take Zamir though. But let's go ahead and let's answer some free questions in the live chat. If y'all have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and drop them. I'll be happy to see if we can answer as many as possible. I can't answer like how much fab to pick up this player because I don't know your league settings. I don't know who you're dropping. Like that'd be a question definitely put on the site so I can get some context to it. CK says drop forward. I would not. I mean, if you are looking at Jerome Ford, this is a running back that still has the receiving role, is still going to have access to the high value touches, even if Deonta Foreman does have a decent amount of snaps here in Cleveland. So I definitely would rather have Ford over Foreman rest of the season. Vinny says Bijan Cup. Yes. Just in case y'all didn't get to see it last night. Somebody was very nice. Not this year at the meetup, but last year at the meetup. Somebody who owns a local art shop in Austin actually made this for us. The quote on top of it says, y'all ever hear about the offer my boy Mason is offering with promo code FLOCK over at Underdog? He's one bad mother flocker. Perfect quote. Lanchino says no super chats. No, all the questions that we do are all through flockfantasy.com. That way, one, just in case you're not in the live stream whenever I answer it, it's still sent to you and you still get the answer through the site. And two, at the same time, I can just see so much more information about your league and give you a much better answer as well. But yeah, the issue that we had with super chats is, I mean, obviously it's not an issue, but I mean, it's my problem that I can't get y'all a good enough product is last year we had a lot of people that would super chat. And then by the time I would get to their question, they had to leave the live stream. And then all of a sudden they never got their answer. I would answer it, but it'd be too late. They'd be gone. But here, even if you ask a question, we actually send you the answer through flockfantasy.com as well. So even if you had to leave the live stream, you can still pull up that clip of me answering your question for you. So it's just much, much easier for everybody. Okay. JC says, yo, Flock, is Akers startable? Cam Akers is definitely startable. It's a great offense. Not only is it a great offense, but at the same time, you don't have Dameon Pierce. It'd be very different if it was just Joe Mixon missing this game, but it's both Joe Mixon as well as Dameon Pierce. Nick says, sell Bowers or McBride, and for what player? I would rather sell Bowers. I have McBride tied in 1 rest of season. Aiden says Brian Thomas Jr. or DeMarcus Robinson. I'm going to go Brian Thomas Jr. Shouldn't be too many points scored in Los Angeles. And I think definitely DeMarcus Robinson's worth a roster spot. And if we get confirmation that he is the wide receiver 1 in this offense after this next week, I think in week 4, we could be excited and we could potentially move him up. But I'm not going to be all in on Demarcus Robinson before we actually see. Okay. Let's move this over. Mike says Purdy or Derek Carr for week 3. I don't think you can start Brock Purdy. Like, I had Brock Purdy as my starting quarterback. I had Brock Purdy and Caleb Williams as the 2 quarterbacks on my team. I know it's gross. And obviously, I don't think Caleb's startable either in the short term. I was trying to hold Caleb for the long term until you got Keenan Allen back in. Hopefully, had a Rome breakout with Rome being fully healthy. And Caleb just naturally progressing through the course of his rookie season. But the issue is, I couldn't start Brock Purdy this week, given all the injuries that you had in San Fran. So I dropped Caleb in favor of picking up Geno Smith, just so I could start Geno. If Carr was available, I would have picked up Derek Carr instead, though. I think you go Carr over Purdy. Okay. Invader says Akers, Ford, or Javonte. I would rather have Cam Akers. Like, I think Ford and Javonte are better running backs, but Cam Akers arguably has a similar, if not better, workload than those other two and much better offenses. But can everybody else spam the chat? Who would you start here? Would you start Cam Akers, Jerome Ford, or Javonte Williams? Cam Akers, Jerome Ford, or Javonte Williams? Ford, Akers, Akers, Ford, Akers. Akers, Ford, Akers, Akers. Ford. I mean, Javonte, Akers, Ford. Yeah, Ford does have a good matchup. I think if you look at the underdog pick'ems, they maybe have Ford over Akers last I checked. They had very high projections on Jerome Ford this week. There are apparently, how are there, why if I look up Ford, am I seeing, I guess Ashford, never mind. Stanford. I was like, why are these college football players popping up? But yeah, Jerome Ford, you have at 69.5 total yards for this week. In comparison, you have Cam Akers at, they don't have a yardage mark. They have Akers higher, lower 12.5 points. They have Ford higher, lower 11.5 points. So yeah, Underdog agrees with me with Cam Akers. But of course, real quick, if you wanted to check out any of these picks over there on Underdog, you can find that link in the description, in the comment section, in the live chat. If you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, on top of that, you will get a free team review in one of these live streams through flockfantasy.com. And you will be getting that free Patrick Mahomes pick, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday night. And Underdog's doing a ridiculous amount of promos for everybody, including the CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half a total yard as well. Let's move this over. Like I said, for market word, we are going to go with Zamir White. All these questions are through flockfantasy.com. You can purchase, start, sit question, trade question, roster review. But if you want a roster review, I highly recommend going through Underdog. That way it's only $10, which is much cheaper than what it is on the site. But start, sit questions and trade questions are super, super cheap on the site. But Dylan says, Puka on the IR, what should we be looking to do? I think you have to start Neighbors based off the target share that he had this past week. Going over to the flex, we have no Kittle. Higgins is in. I think we go ahead. I think we just take the guaranteed running back touches in Travis Etienne. I think T. Higgins has a great matchup, but there's no reason to roll the dice on Higgins when you have just the guaranteed opportunity from a good player like Etienne. Okay. Let's move this over to our next question. Now, Diabetrios, something like that says, hey, Mason, somebody has Williams on the trade block. I'm sitting in first place. So Devontae Adams to Josh Jacobs. I'd probably rather have Jacobs, Dobbins to Williams. Up to you. If you look at my rankings, we have all these players pretty much ranked like back to back to back. Like I have Adams and Jacobs ranked pretty much back to back. Dobbins and Jameson pretty much ranked back to back. So to be completely honest with you, my friend, it is your personal call. It is just up to you. I think it's a fair deal. I think it's fair value. I think Dobbins is definitely going to come back down to earth. I think Jameson's going to come back down to earth as well. But obviously, both have absolutely crushed the first 2 weeks. Okay. Now, Evan coming out with a trade question. Says, worried about Hall with Allen looking so explosive, mostly to build depth. Okay, so going from Jerome Ford to Braylon Allen, I have them ranked pretty much back-to-back rest of season. Up to you. Jaden Reed versus Jalen Waddle. I would rather have Jalen Waddle. I think Reed's slightly better until Tua comes back. But once you get Tua back, I think Waddle's a much better option than Jaden Reed for the long term. But Neil coming out says, Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr., Adam Thielen, Dowdle, or Judy in the flex spot this week. Thanks, Base. No, thank you, my friend. Hopefully you... Okay, so you didn't actually include them. Instead of typing them out in the comments, all you have to do is like actually type them out here. And I can just go ahead and I can click which one I want. That way we can actually send it to you and through the software as well. So definitely next time, my friend, just take advantage of that instead of feeling like you have to use the comment box. But anyway, between Brian Thomas Jr., Adam Thielen, Rico Dowdle, Jerry Jeudy, and Christian Kirk, it's either going to be Brian Thomas Jr. or Jerry Jeudy for me. Looking at the picks that you have right now, Jerry Jeudy is currently sitting with 39.5 receiving yards, higher or lower. Brian Thomas is 42.5 receiving yards, higher or lower. I think there are more points scored in Jacksonville, so I think Brian Thomas Jr. has more touchdown upside. Looking at my flex rankings this week as well, I had Brian Thomas Jr. at 62, Jerry Jeudy at 69. So yeah, I think we stick with Jerry Jeudy here. Okay, let's move this over. El Jefe says, unsure on who to start between Cam Akers or Jalen Warren. I would go ahead, my friend. I'm actually going to start Cam Akers quite confidently over Jalen Warren. Warren's going to be seeing fewer snaps and a worse offense. I think he's a better running back, but he's going to be seeing fewer snaps and a worse offense. And then for the flex spot, yeah, we definitely keep Devonta Smith. I mean, this is a very solid squad overall. But outside of the Stevenson dud that we got this week. But Castillo coming out. Happy to check this one out for you. My friend says, would you make any moves here? I traded Walker last week for Drake London. All right. Well, first thing that I will say is I'm imagining that we are maybe in a little bit of injury trouble if our team is named after Cup. Second thing is this is a league where we can start up to 4 wide receivers from week to week perspective. So wide receiver depth does matter somewhat. But also, on the other hand, it's a 10-team league. So depth should be kind of easy to come by at the same time, right? Now, let's move this over. Going over to this team. Currently sitting at quarterback, we have Kyler and Jaden Daniels. Maybe we already looked at this team because I definitely looked at a team with Kyler and Daniels before. But regardless, if we are looking at Kyler and Daniels, this is a situation in which obviously we can afford to sell one of these quarterbacks. Both guys look like must-start options every single week going into the future, but like if we can go and swing one to the Baker Mayfield team and get an upgrade elsewhere, I think that'd be very interesting. Like this team only has Baker. I think they'd be very happy to trade for Kyler or Daniels. This team has Dak as their QB1. I think we can assume that they would be looking to make that move as well. And let's talk about Brian Robinson Jr. here. I actually saw in the chat somebody saying that I was too low on Brian Robinson. And yeah, I'm actually going to suggest trading away Brian Robinson Jr. here real quick. Let me go ahead and let me pull up the reason why I am quote unquote low on Brian Robinson Jr. If you look at my rankings, I currently have him right alongside guys like Najee Harris, Jonathan Brooks, Ramondre Stevenson, DeAndre Swift. And the big reason with this, with Brian Robinson, is this is a situation in which you have a running back that is going to be getting squeezed for the high value touches. If you are looking at Brian Robinson, you have the rushing touchdowns going to Jaden Daniels, while at the same time, you're actually sitting with some of the receiving volume going in the direction of Austin Eckler. So if we were to update our rankings with Brian Robinson Jr., to be honest with you, he probably should be ahead of Najee. He should probably be ahead of Brooks because Brooks is just in a garbage offense as well. And honestly, he should be ahead of Ramondre based off how bad the Ramondre situation is. But I still view Brian Robinson Jr. as that low-end RB2, kind of around here at RB24, strictly because he is getting squeezed for the high-value touches on both ends. So if you could potentially take, say, Brian Robinson and package him with one of these quarterbacks, whether that's Kyler or Jaden Daniels, and go get a top-end running back, go get somebody like Josh Jacobs, who's going to be in a much better offense, who's not getting squeezed from other running back in his backfield catching the ball, who's not getting squeezed from the rushing quarterback. I think that would make a lot of sense. Like, to go ahead and look at this team that's sitting here with Dak Prescott, if we could say send them Brian Robinson and Jaden Daniels, or Brian Robinson and Kyler Murray to get back Josh Jacobs, I think that would be very interesting. Obviously, it'd be nice if they kicked back over a quarterback for us. I mean, in going over to this team, looking at what they have, I think the swing that we would be looking for is maybe somebody like Travis Etienne in that instance. So if you could send maybe like Daniels and Brian Robinson to get to Etienne, I think that could be very interesting. But going back over to the rest of our team, we have Robinson there as our RB2. So obviously, it's a phenomenal running back room. We have a lot of depth. The Pacheco injury does hurt a ton. We have a Cam Akers short-term fill-in. We have these guys that do appear to be those premium handcuff backs with Ty Chandler as well as Tyler Algier. Now, going over to wide receiver, it's a league where we can start up to 4 wide receivers from a week-to-week perspective. So we are currently sitting with Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Devonta Smith, and Cooper Kupp. So Kupp getting injured here, I think that this actually is a spot where if it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, I think we wouldn't really be making any adjustments. But with instead this being a league where you can start 4 receivers, I actually wouldn't mind at all if you wanted to instead go ahead and see if we could potentially make that 2-for-1 deal, upgrade at running back, and then with the open roster spot, instead of picking up another RB, picking up another wide receiver depth piece. But obviously, I mean, these are 3 players that we can start every single week, kind of regardless of matchup. And once we get cut back in, I mean, this is a phenomenal wide receiver room. Going over to tight end, we get Ferguson back in, and I'm fine not rostering a second tight end because, I mean, obviously tight end is just so damn gross at this point that any points that we're going to get from Ferguson can be okay. But yeah, I think it's a really solid team. The Kupp injury definitely hurts a bit. I think it'd be nice to have a little more wide receiver depth given the league settings. I don't necessarily want to drop any of these RBs. I'm assuming Pacheco's on the IR. Maybe you drop Pacheco if you don't have him IR eligible. But yeah, I think the main thing is seeing if we can take one of these quarterbacks, packaging with Brian Robinson, upgrade at running back 2, and with the open roster spot, pick up another wide receiver, my friend. But yeah, thank you again. And I really hope that I was able to help you out in some way. And hopefully taking advantage of the Underdog offer was not too difficult for you. Well, let's move this over from Dan. This is between Braylon Allen and Zach Charbonnet. Says the website says Zach, but do you think it's Allen at this point? Should I do it? So let me go ahead and let me pull up my rankings on the site just so I can show you where I've had these running backs. And maybe this is something that we need to go through and reconsider. Maybe this is something that we need to revisit. But at running back, going down, I have Braylon Allen. Where the hell is Zach Charbonnet? Okay, we moved Charbonnet, I guess, up to 32 just because Charbonnet is the guaranteed start this week. The thing with Charbonnet versus Braylon Allen, and it's very simple, is you can make an argument Braylon Allen's a more talented running back than Zach Charbonnet and has a higher ceiling if Breece Hall were to go down. But Breece Hall is currently healthy, whereas Kenneth Walker is not. And also with Charbonnet, we've seen that Charbonnet is going to have a role from week to week perspective as well. So can everybody spam the chat? Would you rather have Zach Charbonnet or would you rather have Braylon Allen? Can you please spam the chat? What side are you taking here? I'm taking Charbonnet, given the injury to Kenneth Walker. But obviously, Braylon Allen looked so damn good last night. And he does look like one of the biggest premium handcuff backs you can have. And we got Charbonnet, Allen, Charbonnet, Allen, 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 Allen. Allen, Allen, Charbonnet, 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 Allen, Allen, Allen. So it does look like the majority of people would rather have Braylon Allen there. I think, like I said, Braylon Allen's probably the better running back, but I'm going to go with the running back that is currently filling in for the actual injured guy ahead of him. Let's go ahead. Let's mark that as complete. And let's move this back over. See if we have any more questions. Okay. So this next question is going to be a start sit from Zach. This is, we need to fill out a running back between Brian Robinson, Zach Moss, Isaiah Pacheco. People are going to hate me for this, but we're going to take Zach Moss being a 7.5 point favorite over Washington, seeing the vast majority of the work in Cincinnati. Obviously, Robinson has been significantly better than Moss so far this season. And going over to quarterback, I'm going to take Anthony Richardson over Baker Mayfield, given the rushing upside that we have with A-Rich. And if you actually look at the current projections that you have between Anthony Richardson and Baker Mayfield in terms of their offensive total points scored this week, it's not like the Bucs offense is supposed to be dramatically better than Indy. Now let's move this over to Jason's question. This is a trade question here. It's a 10-team PPR. We're currently 1-1. Not looking like the best squad. We have Daniels, Bijan, Pollard, Wilson, Pittman, Godwin, Henry, Rashad. This is a good team, my friend. Thinking it'd be worth it, but Tua's injury limits Waddle's upside for the next few weeks. For the next month, you can make an argument Pickens is straight up over Jalen Waddle. But if you expect that Tua is going to come back in 5 to 6 weeks, then I think Waddle blows by Pickens, and DeMarcus Robinson, the guy you just picked up off the waiver wire, is barely worth the roster spot and is not going to change my mind in this deal one way or another. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to be taking Jalen Waddle here. But like I said, with no Tua, you can probably rank Pickens over Waddle for the next month. But I just think that Tua does come back. At least that's my personal belief. And I have Jalen Waddle in my league, so I'm very biased. I really want Tua to come back. But we're going to get this going for King Vamp. Appreciate you, my friend. Going to be excited to check this squad out for you. Saying thanks, Mason. No, thank you for being a member of the flock. This is a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So the wide receiver depth, not the highest priority. So we definitely want to be focusing in on running back if possible. But going ahead and pulling this up, we are the number 1 team with the league analyzer. It's not like we are an absolute juggernaut here. It's not like we are just blowing by everybody. But at quarterback, we are currently sitting with A-Rich. Obviously, Richardson looked like a horrible quarterback last week, but he still gave you the rushing upside that you were looking for. So it's not like you need to be making dramatic adjustments. I don't think you need to trade for another quarterback. If you wanted to roster a second, I wouldn't fault you for it, but definitely not something that you have to do. Now, going over to running back, we have Bijan, so we have the RB1 overall. And at the same time, you're sitting here with Jordan Mason. So if we have Jordan Mason, we have a locked and loaded running back 1 in the short term. And then beyond that, it's not like we are super excited about what we have for the long term at RB2 once McCaffrey is back. We have Steele, Zeke, White, Hunt, Keaton, Mitchell. But because we don't have that locked and loaded, just guaranteed stud running back for the long term, instead what we are doing is we are rostering as many running backs as possible. And that is what I really like to see. If we don't have that stud RB2 to just go through and attack the position with quantity over quality, makes a lot of sense. Really do like it. And yeah, I mean, there aren't too many adjustments that we want to be making. Obviously, we're already doing a phenomenal job churning the waiver wire, picking up Carson Steele, picking up Kareem Hunt. Going over to wide receiver. It's a league where wide receiver depth isn't super important, where you only start 2 wide receivers and a single flex. We have Nico, we have London, we have Waddle. So we have the 3 wide receivers that we're building around. Obviously, one of them with Jalen Waddle does take the hit here given the Tua injury. We have Demarcus Robinson there as the 4th guy. Definitely want to at least be rostering 4 wide receivers. I mean, I think it's a completely fine situation. I mean, it just does suck where it does look like we most likely end up having to start Jalen Waddle here in the flex until we get confirmation. Yes, Carson Steele's the guy. Or yes, we can trust Zamir. Going over to tight end, having Laporta and Hunter Henry. Based off what we saw from Henry this past week, if we get any reasonable game from Sam Laporta this week, what I would most likely be looking to do is actually just cut Hunter Henry and go ahead and see if we're able to, say, pick up a potential high upside wide receiver if we get one from the waiver wire. After week 3. But in terms of trades, I don't necessarily think there's much outside of just being a little bit patient here with Jalen Waddle and hoping that we get Tua back in. Obviously, we want to continue to churn where if Demarcus Robinson looks very bad, then at that point, I think you can just go ahead and move on from Demarcus Robinson, pick up whatever high upside wide receiver you like. And then same thing. Like I said, if Sam Laporta looks good, I think we cut Henry, pick up another high upside wide receiver. But really do appreciate you, my friend. I wish I had more for you. But like I said, even before we looked at the team, we wanted to be building around running back depth in this format. That's exactly what we're doing. It's a team that's number 1 with the league analyzer. So I think you're in a great spot. And honestly, there's not too much to discuss. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you, my friend. Really hope I was able to help you out some way. And yeah, hope you have a great night. But let's move this over to the next squad. This is Austin Porter, King of the Hill. Says, here's the team. I have a standing offer for McCaffrey and Jaden Reed for my Josh Jacobs. I'm trying to trade for a usable before I commit to that. Do you have any insight on who we could go after and what I can trade with? I was thinking of trading London with Spears or someone else to make a deal. In my experience at this moment, you are not going to be getting anything for Drake London. London obviously was okay this past week. Definitely not great. Definitely doesn't look like somebody that should have gone at the 1-2 turn. But from what I've seen, there's absolutely no intrigue with Drake London across the fantasy football community at this point, at least with the trades that I have been looking at. So, I mean, of course, that doesn't mean you can't trade away Drake London. It's just to say, let's be very reasonable on what the expectations of what we are going to be able to get here are. Now, going through this with the league analyzer, this is a league where we can start up to 4 wide receivers from a week-to-week perspective. So it's a league where the wide receiver depth does matter a decent amount. It's a 12-teamer as well. And we are currently sitting at, I want to say 6 with the league analyzer, which it does look like teams 3 through 6 are about the same. So we're just a slightly above average team in this league. Going over to quarterback, we have the stud QB. We have Jalen Hurts. Looks like a spot where we're able to roster a ton of players. I actually still probably go ahead and move on from Geno Smith. Let's see what the other teams in your league are doing. Are they all rostering 2 quarterbacks? This Kyler team only has 1. This team's rostering 3. Okay, yeah. So in that case, you probably just want to roster. I mean, you probably do want to roster Geno just because the options on the waiver wire are going to be extremely limited if we are seeing everybody else roster 2 to 3 quarterbacks. Now, going over to running back, we have Jacobs. With Jacobs, this isn't necessarily a situation in which we can say, oh, okay, yes, we have the elite RB1, we have Brees, we have Bijan, but I mean, we do have a running back that we can start every week regardless of matchup. Should be a much better offense as well. Now that we are going to be getting back in a Mr. Jordan Love here, hopefully just coming in and saving the day. In terms of Carson Steele, Tajay Spears, Gus Edwards, Rico Dowdle, and Khalil Herbert, we are just taking shots, right? Rostering a bunch of running back depth pieces, seeing if one of them turns out. If one of them works out, then that's great. If not, it is what it is. But for the time being, I definitely think that this is a situation in which we do have upside here where we could potentially hit on Carson Steele at running back 2, or maybe Tony Pollard goes down and Tyjae Spears turns into a league winner. Now, obviously, if you were to go out and if you were to trade away Josh Jacobs for McCaffrey, then at that point, you are just absolutely toast. Because at that point, we are starting Carson Steele and Tyjae Spears. So I think it's a fair pivot to go get McCaffrey at that price by sending away Jacobs. And if this was a team where we had enough running back depth to get it done and we had running backs producing, then I could consider it. But considering the situation that you were in right now, honestly, you cannot afford to go and trade for Christian McCaffrey. You cannot afford to give up Josh Jacobs with this team. Going over to wide receiver, we got hit with the Tyreek Tua situation, which obviously does put you in a very tough spot. We have London, JSN, Christian Kirk, and Demarcus Robinson. So looking at the wide receiver depth here, it's a league where you can start 4 wide receivers from week to week perspective. We have 3 of them that we're excited about. One of them that maybe bounces back and turns into something. But overall, the primary issue that you would have with this team is not necessarily the lack of talent at the very top. The primary issue that you would have is the lack of overall depth that you have at wide receiver and honestly viable running backs. And we have running backs that are injuries away from making a difference, but not running backs that we can plug and play right now. So what I would personally be looking to do is I think you need to be rostering more running backs and receivers. I know that we kind of walked our stance back of cutting Geno Smith to pick up another viable running back or another viable wide receiver off the waiver wire when we saw the rest of your league mates also rostering 2 to 3 QBs. However, now that we get to see the wide receiver room, we get to see the running back room, I actually do think that this is a much more appealing situation to just say, you know what? One, we can't afford to trade for McCaffrey. I don't even think you need to be trying to come up with like a 3-team trade where we make this deal. That way we can afford to get McCaffrey in. No, we're already having to try to get by with the Tua injury with Tyreek. I think we need to focus in on running back and wide receiver depth. And for us to do just that, I think we cut Geno Smith and then we cut Tyler Conklin and we pick up an additional running back and wide receiver off the waiver wire. Because when we have Hurts, when you have McBride, we paid up for these guys. We took a small hit with running back and receiver because we got the elite tight end and the elite quarterback. So we need to be allocating as many raw spots to those positions as possible. And the CMC deal is definitely interesting. I just don't think you can afford it at this time, my friend. I am sorry, though. But let's move this over to the next question. This one coming out from Blockchain Brett. This is Dell and Rico for Worthy, Ford, and Chubb. So Dell to Worthy, up to you. Ford, Chubb versus Rico Dowdle, the Cleveland backs by a country mile. So we're going to go ahead. We are going to take the Browns backs. We will take Xavier Worthy. Yeah, honestly, relatively easily here as well, my friend. Now, Delafit coming out. This is a trade where we're pivoting from the elite receiver to the elite running back and from the top end running back to the top end wide receiver. So I think this is the perfect example of a just personal preference deal. How do you personally value these guys? I think it's a fair trade. Can everybody spam the chat? Would you rather have the Lamb side of this or the Rashee Rice side of this? This is Lamb and Achane versus Rice and Robinson. Lamb and Achane versus Rice and Bijan. Okay. Checking this. 1 vote, Rice, Lamb. Rice, Lamb. Does look like the vast majority of people are on the CeeDee Lamb side here. So we're going to go ahead. We'll mark that as the winner. I do think it's a situation in which it's kind of just up to you, to be honest. I mean, if Tua was fully healthy, I think it would be the Lamb and Achane side easily. But with the concerns about the Miami offense, I think it is somewhat warranted to ask it. But let me answer any of the free questions that we have in the chat right now. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them for me to get to. Nolan says start to Waddle, Pickens, Higgins. We're going to go ahead. We'll take Higgins and Pickens and bench Waddle with Skylar Thompson. And then or Akers at the very end. Full PBR, I still think go with the receivers. And you could go JSN over Pickens as well. I'm definitely playing T. Higgins, though. Tanish says Jameson or Rachaad White at the flex. I will go ahead and I'll take Rachaad White. I mean, with Jameson, obviously, he's been phenomenal. I just don't necessarily know if we can easily expect us to see the same passing volume carry over in Detroit, where you did have 55 pass attempts for Jared Goff in this offense last week. I don't necessarily know if that's something that we can say is happening again here. Okay. So let's move this over. Noah says Deontay Johnson or Cam Akers. Very easily. Cam Akers, I mean, much better offense. There will be more touchdown opportunities and with the guaranteed touches as well. So, yeah, super, super easy for me to take Cam Akers over Deontay. Okay. Let's move this over. Devin says start Brian Thomas or Terry McLaurin. I think I'm going to go ahead. I am going to take Terry if it's a full PPR format. We have the coaching staff coming out saying like, yeah, we know we need to get the ball to Terry more. It's just been how defensive coordinators have been going up against us, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, it doesn't help us, the people who have been starting Terry McLaurin like I have. So hopefully it gets a little bit better soon. It's been ugly. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Scott says Swift, Steele, Javonte, or Chuba. We got to start one. I think I actually go with DeAndre Swift. Swift should have a pretty good matchup going up against the Indianapolis Colts. The main thing that I'd be concerned about is if you saw the Colts guy who sings the Let's Go Colts, This Is Our Colts song. If you saw the clip, he actually got some Colts cheerleaders to sing it with him this week. So if that's not going to motivate the team, I don't know what is. So there's a chance the Colts come out here and stomp them and win by 30. Okay. Let's move this over. Anakin says start one, Kyron or DK. I will go Kyron over DK for the guaranteed touches. We'll go Kyron over DK. Okay. And let's move this back over and get some more questions going on the site. Of course, you can always purchase start sit question, trade question, roster review, all through flockfantasy.com. We'll reiterate, definitely the cheapest way to get that roster review is actually taking advantage of the offer that we have on Underdog Fantasy, where if you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog, you are going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, with promo code FLOCK on Underdog, you will also be getting a free Patrick Mahomes pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game on Sunday. Underdog has been doing a ton of additional promos as well, such as the CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half a total yard. And yeah, with code FLOCK, just make sure you set up an account on flockfantasy.com. That way, if you used and you made that $10 deposit on Underdog, I can set you up with that free team review voucher. Like this team that we're reviewing right here, Connor. This is a free review because he used that deal on Underdog. But let's move this over. So I just traded Josh and Shaheed for Ayuk and Dak. Interesting. So let's see what this team's sitting at right now. It's a 12-team league where you can start up to 4 wide receivers from week to week perspective. We are sitting here near the bottom of the league analyzer, which is concerning. So you just traded Josh and Shaheed for Ayuk and Dak. I don't see any of these players on the team. I don't see Ayuk. I don't see Dak. I don't see Josh. I don't see Shaheed. This is Connor's team. So hopefully something's not going wrong here. But anyway, quarterback, hopefully we do not have Dak Prescott. Hopefully instead we are sitting here with Josh Allen. And if that is the case, obviously Allen is a super exciting play every single week. No hesitation here whatsoever. Go ahead, you can start him. Don't need to roster a backup quarterback there either. Going over to running back, currently are sitting with Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift. Definitely a sus running back room. This week we start Akers and Swift, or Steele and Swift. Up to you on that. Obviously, when we get Walker back in, it's going to be a significantly better running back room when all of a sudden we actually have an RB1 and all these kind of mediocre options we can choose between as an RB2. But we definitely have a path to a ceiling where it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world if Carson Steele came out and Carson Steele just kind of did turn into a 3-down starter here for the Kansas City Chiefs. And it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world. Oh, James Conner gets injured. Trey Benson is a league winner. Tony Pollard gets injured. Tajay Spears is a league winner. So definitely like rostering these running backs. But I mean, for the short term, when you have no Kenneth Walker, it is just a very, very tough situation. Now, going over to wide receiver, we are currently sitting with an injured A.J. Brown, an injured Puka Nacua. We have T. Higgins coming back this week. Thank God. But this is a league where you start 8 guys. So, I mean, you're going to start Allen, Ferguson, quarterback, tight end this week. Running back, Swift, say Steele. Wide receiver, Higgins, Shaheed. And then for the flex spots, we have to go Akers and Demarcus Robinson? Like, this is a brutal situation with all the injuries that we are dealing with. If you would have sent this, honestly, I mean, maybe there's still a shot to do this tomorrow before this game kicks off. I think that there's an outside chance that you're in a situation in which you kind of need to sell one of these injured receivers and pivot over to somebody that's going to be giving you production right now. Where if you wanted to pivot, say, from A.J. Brown and instead get a different low-end wide receiver 1. Like right now, if we're looking at the other wide receivers that are around the A.J. Brown mark in my rankings, like if you can pivot from A.J. Brown maybe to Harrison, obviously I'd rather have Brown rest of season, but the issue is when you have the Walker injury, when you have the Higgins injury, when you have the Brown injury, when you have to start it, it's not a 2 wide receiver 1 flex format. It's a deeper league than that. You're in a situation in which you may end up having to sell one of the injured guys for 95 cents on the dollar just to make sure that we can stay competitive right now. A potential other pivot that we can make is if we go look at our rankings and look at where Puka Nacua is. If you could pivot over to like Jalen Waddle, I think that would be interesting because in the case of Puka Waddle, obviously both are better long-term plays than they are short-term because the Tua injury and the Puka injury itself. But maybe the Waddle owner isn't actually starting Waddle because of the Tua injury. So they're just thinking long-term anyway. But for us, Waddle would still be a play anyway over somebody like Demarcus Robinson. So I think that could potentially be something that we are looking to do here. Let me see, like, what is... This is honestly just kind of for my own. I shouldn't be wasting your time with this. Underdog has Waddle at 8.45 points higher or lower. What do they have Terry at? Dear God, do I have to start Terry McLaurin over Jalen Waddle this week? But anyway, I think that's the main thing with this team. From a roster construction perspective, I think it's extremely strong where we have the top end quarterback. We have the top end tight ends. We don't need to roster anybody beyond. We're rostering as much wide receiver and running back depth as we possibly can. The main thing is when you're dealing with this many injuries, I wouldn't fault you for just going through and selling one of the injured guys and getting somebody in that's going to play this week. Especially with all those injuries, I wouldn't be surprised if we were sitting here at 0-2. I'm kind of hoping that this is a team that's 1-1. But let's move this over to Eating Ass, Smoking Grass. Very interesting team name. And real quick, SH says, hey, Mason, now I get the free team review. I did the Underdog deposit. So if you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address that you used to make that Underdog deposit. Then the following morning, whenever Underdog gives me all the email addresses from the previous day's signups, then I go through and then I credit those users with free team review vouchers. Where if you wanted to ever ask a question, whether it's a paid question or a free question, if you have that free team review voucher, it's the little comment section in the top right corner of the chat. And then just go all the way through as if you're submitting a team. When you get to the creator page, it should say free on my name and you can use it there. And if you want to check to see if you have that free voucher, go to your account page. But anyway, it's coming out from, this is a question that says, any moves, what to do with Raheem Mostert? And then do we have running back depth concerns? First thing that I want to mention is there are 4 juggernauts here and everybody else is significantly behind if you're looking at the league analyzer. Show me the Monstars, Earthy, Eaton. These are the strong teams in this league. These are our opponents. And I'm happy that we are a part of that group. Second thing is, what are we going to do with Raheem Mostert? One, I believe that long-term Raheem Mostert has too much upside to go ahead and cut him. 2, there is not a single soul in the world that would go through and buy Raheem Mostert from you. So your only option of what to do at this point with Raheem Mostert is keep him on the bench, hope he comes back healthy, hope that Tua comes back in this offense and it's a good offense yet again. But can y'all please spam the chat? And there's nothing to spam. Like, are you cutting Raheem Mostert? I don't think you should be cutting Raheem Mostert. But we have Lamar. With Lamar, this is a quarterback that we can start every single week. Don't need a backup. Obviously, excited to have him. Going over to running back, you're currently sitting with Kyron, Walker, Charbonnet, Mostert, Lake Corum. I actually think it's a fine running back room. I mean, this is a league where you're going to start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So I'd definitely be preferring to roster more running backs than this if possible. But it's not like we're having a full-blown panic here at running back. I mean, you have the Walker injury, which is frustrating. But you have Zach Charbonnet that we can go through and fill in instead. Going over to wide receiver, we have 3 cornerstone pieces that we are playing every single week, regardless of the matchup. We have Lamb, Harrison, Neighbors. Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 in the flex. We have quality depth pieces that should have decent ceilings, such as Terry McLaurin and Ladd McConkey. So when we have this group of 5 receivers, and it's a league where you can only start 2 receivers and 1 flex, what I would personally be looking to do is I would look to go ahead and just drop Jacoby Myers and drop Alec Pierce. I would drop both of these wide receivers, pick up running backs, especially if you are worried about the overall depth that you have at the running back position. Add in 2 more running backs, just trying to find the next Jordan Mason, trying to find the next Zach Charbonnet, trying to find the next Cam Akers, trying to find the next guy that is filling in for one of these starters. Because there's no world in which you're ever starting Alec Pierce. There's no world in which you're ever starting Jacoby Myers here. So I'll be cutting both these receivers, picking up 2 running backs. At tight end, we are chilling with Dalton Kincaid. So honestly, it's a very strong team. I don't think you need to panic. I don't think you can sell Raheem Mostert. Nobody's going to buy. I think he's too good to cut. So yeah, let's just drop the receivers, pick up running backs, and we're a part of one of those juggernaut teams in this league. So honestly, I think you are sitting pretty, my friend. But Jenna L coming out with our next question says, what do you think about this? I would love your opinion on what to do. Okay. If we're getting a stronger team here, this is an interesting spot. The team giving up Mason has Brees, Dobbins, Charbonnet. So the team giving up Mason could definitely afford it. They don't need Jordan Mason in the short term. Yeah, so you don't need Mason in the short term. We get the long-term upside of Bijan. Bijan's an upgrade. Actually, no. Who do we have at tight ends outside of Bowers? We have Ferguson as well. I think that this is a trade. If you put it into the trade calculator on the site, it'll be very close. But knowing that we have such strong running backs that you don't need to start Jordan Mason, and we have a viable tight end fill-in for Brock Bowers, I think we're going to go ahead. We are going to take Bijan Robinson here relatively easily. I think Bijan's the best asset in fantasy football. When in doubt, get the best player. You have a phenomenal team here. I think you can afford to make a move like this. Okay. Let's move this over to our next question. This is a start sit from Michael. Here, we are considering Waddle. I think you have to go with Ayuk for sure. Here, I think you have to go Godwin over Waddle for sure. Tight end, Kelsey. Running back, I think we're going to go with Zach Moss in a great matchup. We're going to go with Zach Charbonnet with all the work there in Seattle. Quarterback, we're going to go Anthony Richardson with the rushing upside. And for the flex between Waddle, Akers, Steele, these are the three guys that we would be considering. I may end up going Cam Akers. I think we go Akers. I mean, Akers is in a spot where not only do you have no Mixon, but you also have no Dameon Pierce. It's a very good offense. There'll be significantly more points scored in Houston than there will be in Miami. And with Steele, you do have P. Ryan in the game. So we're going to go Akers in the flex. It is a little bit nerve-wracking, though, for sure. Now, going over to our next question. This is a start-sit question from Tom. It says, need help deciding which two to start between Nico and Devonta Smith. Thanks. So thank you, my friend. Is this really something we have to... Can we not just flex Smith? Yeah, we have Nico at wide receiver. Devonta Smith for the flex. Oh, it's because we have Rashee Rice and you have to start Rice. If you're looking at my... This is a nuts team. You look at my rankings this week. Honestly, that's kind of irrelevant. Let's just pull up. Whenever I look at the true wide receiver ones, like the top 6 guys, I do not spend much time at all thinking about where we rank them because it's like, okay, you play these guys literally regardless. Okay. So let's move this over. Nico Collins on Underdog. They currently have higher, lower, 72.5 receiving yards. They have him at 13.05 fantasy points. Devonta Smith. $70.5 receiving yards, 12.75 fantasy points. And Rashee Rice, 75.5 receiving yards, 14.85 fantasy points. So here, if you're listening to those projections, and honestly, it probably does make a lot of sense. You go ahead and you take Rice and Nico, the alpha wide receiver ones, in offenses that should have more passing volume. Now, M. Zigward. This is Swift, Tyreek versus Barkley and Amari. Tyreek, Barkley, give me Barkley. Swift, Amari, up to you. We're going to go with the Saquon Barkley side. If Tua was not concussed, then I think we go Tyreek, Swift. But with the Tua injury, we're going to go Barkley. Now, Fiven, coming out with our next question, says, hey there, this is a 25 yard per point, 6-point passing touchdown, 10 yard per rushing. Okay, so standard there. Looking for any ways to improve the team. Thank you. No, thank you, my friend. Going to be excited to check this out. I will say if it's a 6-point passing touchdown format, the quarterback's rushing upside's maybe going to matter a little bit less, but it's not a super big deal. When we have Hurts, doesn't matter what the format is. Obviously, elite level quarterback. We start him every single week. Don't need a backup. Going down to the bench, yeah, we are not currently rostering a backup for Jalen Hurts here. Perfect situation. Going over to running back, we are currently sitting with Breece Hall, Zach Charbonnet in the starting lineup. Obviously, Hall, anchor RB, gives us a lot of flexibility here. Zach Charbonnet's short-term fill-in premium handcuff RB. Going down to the bench, we do not have a solidified long-term running back 2 option. We have Algier, we have Chuba Hubbard, we have Kareem Hunt. We definitely have running backs that we can be considering, but not necessarily guys that are locked and loaded, just elite level plays. Now going over to what we have in the flex. Yeah, we have Juwan Jennings. So running back 2 will be a long-term concern for us. I like the profile of guys that we are going after. These running backs that do have the size to be 3-down options if things were to break right in their respective situations. Going over to wide receiver, we have Dell Worthy, Juwan Jennings in the starting lineup. Obviously, Dell Worthy, I'd profile them to be wide receiver 2's rest of season / high-end wide receiver 3 options. To have them as my wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 combo, I'm terrified. To have Juwan Jennings in my flex, even if it's only a 1-week thing, I'm terrified. The Deebo Samuel injury really does hurt here. Going over to tight end, we have Sam Laporta. We can start Laporta every single week. He's been very bad. I hope he's much better. Sam Laporta was like my most drafted tight end on Underdog in round 4, and I took him in round 4 of the Flock League. And obviously, both of those calls look horrendous at this point through the first 2 weeks. I'm hoping Sam Laporta is going to be significantly better going into the future. In terms of what we can do with this team just seems like we're in a spot we need Deebo back in. We have Deebo back in. Worthy slides down to the flex for us. Going down to the bench, we're already optimizing for these running backs that are an injury away. Yoshivash is maybe somebody that I think you can go ahead and cut now that T. Higgins is coming back. If you wanted to cut Yoshivash and pick up a different wide receiver or running back, I think you could just do that off the waiver wire now that you have Higgins back in Cincinnati. But ultimately, I mean, there just aren't too many moves that you can make with this team. If this was a league with multiple flex spots and the Deebo Samuel injury hurt us this much, I would definitely say to sell Jalen Hurts. But I think we kind of get saved where it's a league with only 2 wide receivers and 1 flex in your starting lineup. So you can kind of get by with this team as is. I think, yeah, it's the right construction. The Deebo injury really hurts us. There's nothing that we can do about it. Main thing is just going ahead and maybe churning the bottom end of the team, dropping Yoshivash, picking up a different player off the waiver wire. And yeah, like I said, if it was a multiple flex league, I definitely think we have different advice to just to sit on your hands. But I think in a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, you can afford it. Now let's move over to our next question coming out from Jake. This is Lamb versus Higgins and Worthy. This is Lamb easily, my friend. Lamb is that elite level asset. I'm excited about Higgins coming back. I'm excited about Worthy as well with no Hollywood. But I mean, it doesn't matter if this is a redraft league, a dynasty league, doesn't matter what it is. The answer is CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is a clear tier ahead of almost any other wide receiver in fantasy not named Amon-Ra St. Brown at this point. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get this going for Midnight Club Rashid Ed. Hopefully we said that name correctly, my friend, but says any trade suggestions to increase our odds. Well, a couple different things. One, this is a dynasty league here, so definitely need to be looking at it through a different lens. 2, this is a super flex format, which obviously is super flex dynasty league. Obviously, we want to say, oh, okay, all of a sudden we need to be pivoting over to maybe focusing in a little bit more on the upside quarterbacks with QB depth. But since it's an 8-team league, everybody should, on average, be able to start 4 quarterbacks. Should be able to have 4 starting quarterbacks on their team from a week-to-week perspective. So we're really not too concerned about what we are going to have with the quarterback depth. And the only thing that matters is upside, upside, upside. Now, the second thing I want to address is we don't have a 2025 first year. We don't have a 2026 first. So we are highly incentivized to contend right now. Super, super tough spot to be in. Super tough. Now, going over to quarterback, we currently have Love, Dak, McCarthy, Fields, Russ. Is Jordan Love a top 8 quarterback this season? I don't know. Is Dak Prescott a top 16 QB? Yes. I think you probably have 2 quarterback 2s here in this format. If this was a 12-team league, I would love this quarterback room. In an 8-team league, it's definitely a little bit tougher. Now, going over to running back. Is Gibbs a top 8 running back? Yes. Is Hall a top 8 running back? Yes. Is Kamara a top 8 running back? Yes. So in the short term, we have 3 running back ones that we're able to play every single week. Going over to receiver, Lamb and Rashee Rice, both here are potentially top 8 receivers at the same time. We potentially have multiple wide receiver ones. So the skill positions are extremely strong. What I would love to do here, if possible, and going over to tight end, we have Hawkinson and Njoku, Hunter Henry. So we're going to be just fine at tight end once we get Hawkinson and Njoku back in. But this is a team where you are extremely incentivized to build to win right this second, to sell the long-term value, to try to improve in the starting lineup for right now. So what we want to be doing is we want to go approach some of these garbage teams here at the very bottom that instead maybe have no shot to win this year. And maybe we want to try to make some 2-for-1 deals where we can get upgrades inside the starting lineup and have some runway right now. Looks like this team's a fan of some of these rookie receivers. If we're sitting here, say, with Ricky Pearsall, with Xavier Legette, I think these are very clear pieces that we can move in a 2-for-1 deal to try to get an upgrade and help us in right now. So if you can move Ricky Pearsall and TJ Hawkinson and go get Mark Andrews in this dynasty league from this team that should be rebuilding, when obviously we are a team that's pushing in to contend right this second, I think that would be a very interesting move. Selling the injured tight end, selling the long-term rookie receiver to go get the aging veteran that it will be declining in value for this team. I think another thing that we could potentially look to do is take that other rookie receiver, whether that's Legette or Pearsall, and see if we can package together them with one of these quarterbacks to see if we can get a QB upgrade. You're just simply not going to be able to get to Kyler. That's the issue here. I'm trying to find if there's a trade that makes sense where we can possibly get that running back upgrade. Maybe if we could pivot from like this other team just looks like absolute garbage in an 18 format, especially with the Pacheco injury as well. And the Mixon injury. Yeah, this team needs to pivot over to a rebuild. If you could potentially sell, say, like J.J. McCarthy and pivot over to McCaffrey in this 8-team Superflex League, I would love that for a contending team. And then, yeah, the main thing is we need to be pushing in to win right this second, selling some of these assets that are just long-term pieces for us, targeting the 2 bottom teams here, seeing if we can pry away some of these veteran producers that are going to be declining in value over the next few years. I think that's the main move that we have. Now, of course, I do want to reiterate as well, I think that this is a very strong team that can contend this season, that can contend next year. But I do want to make sure we know, let's not focus in on selling picks to get this done. I definitely think where things go a little off the rails is if we decide to start selling 2027 first round picks. Like, I think we push in to win the next 2 years and then we reevaluate in 2026 on if this is a team that still should be a contending roster, or if at that point, maybe it makes sense when some of these running backs start to age out to pivot over and hit that reset button and get an early pick in 2027 and kind of rebuild at that point. But I hope I was able to help you out in some way here, my friend. Really do appreciate you and really hope, we're able to take it down this season. But let's move over to this next trade. It's coming up from Consequential. Says, hey, man, huge fan of the channel. Got offered this today. Wasn't planning on selling Tyreek, though. Okay. Tyreek to Neighbors. I'd rather have Tyreek. Pollard to Amari. Probably rather have Pollard. I don't think James Cook's enough to bridge the gap for me. So, honestly, I think I'd go ahead and take Tyreek. Like, obviously, Tyreek, we lower the expectations right now because he's going to be in a horrible offense. But Malik Neighbors is going to be in a horrible offense as well, right? So, yeah, I think I would just rather have Tyreek Hill here. And obviously, James Cook just absolutely crushed it last week. But at the same time, nothing fundamentally changes with the player that James Cook is. He's still a running back that's in a very good offense that will catch the ball some. That is pretty talented, but is also going to get vultured from Josh Allen at the goal line some as well. Okay. Now let's move this over to our next. Let's actually get some free questions in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat right now. Okay, Bulldog says, expect Ty Chandler to take more snaps from Aaron Jones. It'll be minimum 50-50 this week against the Texans. What are you basing this off of, my friend? I would love to know if this is based off something. I mean, like I said, Ty Chandler's had a decent role here. Like, this is a committee, which is why I don't mind telling people to sell Aaron Jones. But is there, like, why are we thinking that Ty Chandler's going up? You know what I mean? Hunter said, I asked a question, is there no super chat anymore? No, everything's through flockfantasy.com, my friend. That way, if I'm not able to get to your question immediately and you have to leave the live stream, the answer is still sent to you and you can see that clip whenever. Whereas when we were doing everything through super chat, some people had missed the answer to their questions. And also through flockfantasy.com, I'm able to see so much more information regarding your settings, etc. Okay, it looks like the Ty Chandler stuff was not based off anything in particular. JBD says Amari or Dobbins. Full PBR format this week. Give me Amari. John says trade value on Tyreek. Where I have Tyreek right now. I mean, here's where Tyreek is in the expert rankings on flockfantasy.com. Tyreek's currently at 8. He's right behind Chase, Barkley, Jefferson, right ahead of Nico, A.J. Brown, Achane. Now, if you look at my rankings, I'm a little bit higher in the running backs than the average experts. So I have Tyreek down at 9. But yeah, hopefully that helps you, my friend. The Big Worm says Goff for Darnold this week. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Jared Goff, my guy. Goff, I think it should be a super high-scoring game environment going up against Arizona. Okay. Sahil says, why so low on Zamir White when Antonio Pierce reiterates that he's going to get 20-plus touches weekly? All right, my friend. Let's figure this out together. Let us figure this out together. Zamir White, week 1, 13 carries, 44 rushing yards, 2 targets, 2 receiving yards. Does not look like 20 touches to me. Week 2, 9 carries, 3 receptions for a total of 38 yards. Does not look like 20 touches to me. So Antonio Pierce can come out and he can say every single week, hey guys, yeah, we're trying to get Zamir White 20 plus touches. Hey guys, we're trying to get Zamir White 20 plus touches. Hey guys, we're trying to get Zamir White 20 plus touches. And every week Zamir White can go get you 30 rushing yards. It doesn't matter at all what the coaching staff says. It doesn't matter at all. Now, I will say, I think Zamir White's going to be much better this week than he has been through the first 2 because of a very good matchup going up against the Carolina Panthers. But let's not sit here and act like just because coach says they want to get a player 20-plus touches, that means that's going to happen. Coaches say things all the time. Okay. Chris says, I bet the Panthers beat the Raiders this week. What odds did you get on that? What odds? The DK says, who to package any of all Judy Sutton, likely Brian Thomas for? Very, very broad question, my friend. Henry says, I'm hoping Zamir falls into the end zone and somehow someone will take him off my hands. Like Zamir White, honestly, is, like I said, he's set up to have a very strong game given the environment that you have going up against Carolina. And with Zamir White, the underlying usage that you had last week in terms of his total snaps played were actually very encouraging, where Alexander Mattison did take the step backwards. Look at Underdog, he is higher, lower, 70.5 total yards, which is by far and away the highest pick that we've seen on Zamir White all season. And yeah, it's primarily because it's just such a good matchup going up against Carolina. Victor says, Juwan Jennings is going to pop off, I think. I'm not so certain that Ayuk is even going to lead in targets. What's the projection with Juwan Jennings? They don't have one out right now. Assuming they're waiting on Kittle. The Machine House says Andrews and Diggs for Bowers and Malik. Bowers and Malik. If you go over to flockfantasy.com, you'll see... one with my tight end rankings. I have Bowers tight end 4 rest of season. I have Andrews tight end 8. I'd rather have Bowers. And at wide receiver, Malik versus Diggs. I have Malik wide receiver 13 rest of season. I have Diggs wide receiver 22 rest of season. So, yeah. I think it's very easily the Bowers and Malik side. Very easily, to be honest. Big Worm says, hoping to sell Adams for a king's ransom after this week. And Adams did have the phenomenal week last week. What we saw last week with the Raiders, they just had to completely abandon the run given the game environment against Baltimore. But Valid says, Tank Dell or Cam Akers in the flex in a non-PPR format. Full PPR league, I go ahead and take Tank Dell. Non-PPR format, definitely going to be a little bit tougher here. I actually think I maybe go, honestly, up to you. I'm not going to tell somebody. Actually, I think, I go Cam Akers. Non-PPR format, give me Akers. But let's move this back over. Let's get to some more of the questions on the site real quick. And of course, if you wanted to ask any questions, you can through flockfantasy.com. You can ask a start sit question, trade question, full-blown roster review, whatever you're wanting. If you're wanting to know how everybody's getting these roster reviews for free through flockfantasy.com, it's because they're taking advantage of the offer that we have with Underdog, or if you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy with the link in the description and the live chats, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you will also get a free team review in one of these live streams. All you have to do is have that account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address, and at the same time, you'll be getting that free Patrick Mahomes pick, more than less than half a total yard for the Sunday night game. And Underdog's dropping a ton of promos all the time, such as the CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half a total yard here as well. And you can find that link in the description and comment section. Now we're going to go over to Gibbs Me Boobs. It says, hey Mason, this is a 12-team double flex, 4-bench league. So 4-bench league. The options on the waiver wire are going to be phenomenal. But says, this really wasn't my plan in the draft, but the way it fell, I ended up putting on receiver and been trying to make up for it ever since. Do we have any advice here? Well, first thing is, my friend, we are sitting here with the second most valuable team according to the League Analyzer, which obviously isn't everything, but I'm very proud of what we've done with the League Analyzer. Typically, when we pull up a team that's at the top, looks very good. And yeah, this team looks very good. Going over to quarterback, we have the QB1 in fantasy. We have Josh Allen. When we have Allen, don't need to roster another guy. We can just go ahead, start him every single week, regardless of matchup. It is a beautiful situation to be in. Going over to running back, we have the 2 anchors. We have Barkley. We have Gibbs. 2 guys that we're able to start every single week. 100%, if you could have started your draft off with Gibbs, Barkley, you should have. Pretty much best case scenario here. And when we have Gibbs, Barkley, obviously we do want to have some running backs down on the bench. But running back depth isn't necessarily going to be the highest priority, especially in a league that's a double flex format. So you can start up to 4 wide receivers from a week-to-week perspective. So the wide receiver depth is going to make a difference here. Now, going over to the depth, we have Edwards, Akers, Gainwell. My thing with Gainwell is if Barkley goes down, do you start him? Like with those running backs that we roster as handcuffs down there at the bottom end, especially if it's a league with only 4 bench spots. So you should have very appealing options on the waiver wire. If the answer to this question is yes, then keep Kenneth Gainwell in the squad. But if Saquon Barkley goes down to an injury, are you starting Kenneth Gainwell? Going over to receiver, we have Higgins, the injury to Cooper Kupp. We have JSN. So yeah, the ultimate issue that you have with this team is just the lack of wide receiver depth. Where we're able to start Higgins and JSN this week. Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman are great long-term pieces. Cooper Kupp's a great long-term piece. But in the short term, we're in a bunch of pain. Super nice that we get to play Cam Akers in one of these flexes. Mike Williams is a wide receiver that is expanding his role in New York, but at the same time, if you're looking at what you potentially have with, say, the Allen Lazard usage, even if you think that this is a spot in which you can project out Mike Williams to continue to expand his role, if Lazard has anything here, it may be tough to fully rely on Mike Williams. So if you wanted to move on from Big Mike, when it fall, you going over to tight end, we have McBride, the tight end 1 in fantasy. So don't need a backup. So, I mean, how do we work this team? The Kupp injury is just freaking brutal. If Kupp was fully healthy and we're starting Barkley, Gibbs, Kupp, Higgins, JSN, Akers, and we get the long-term upside of Ladd, Keon, this is the best team in this league, not even close. Kupp going down because this is a double flex format does put us in a very awkward spot. Being able to pick up Cam Akers and get a viable flex play does kind of save us for the short term. I think we go ahead and we play Keon Coleman. Honestly, with the Justin Herbert injury, I think you have to be worried about the Chargers guys. And this is a team that we just have to get by over the next few weeks. If we get to week 6 and we're 3-3, the rest of the league has no shot here. If we get a fully healthy Kupp, if we get one of these rookies breaking out, whether that's Ladd or Keon, you are going to be in a phenomenal spot. I think you've already put yourself in a great situation. We took the anchor running backs. We got the elite quarterback, the elite tight end. What else did we do? We went wide receivers in the middle rounds, and we got the upside of these rookies. It's going to take a little bit of time to play out. It's going to take a little bit of time for Kupp to come back in. But in terms of trades, I don't necessarily see any, my friend. I think at the bottom end of this bench, such as Gainwell, Mike Williams, we don't focus in on long-term upside. We focus in on guys that could potentially be in our starting lineup in week 3 and week 4 and churn with that in mind. But it's a great squad where honestly, I think we are probably keeping it as is. And I don't necessarily know if there are too many adjustments we need to be making here, my friend. But let's move this over to our next question. This is from Richie Rich. Fills this out wrong. So say, my guy, you wanted to ask me Deontay, Jordan Whittington, or Jerome Ford. All you would do is you'd put one flex spot and then you would put the 3 players underneath like this. So I can go ahead and I can click on them and then I can send it to you and you'll see it. You can see the clip and everything. But yeah, we will go with Jerome Ford over Deontay Johnson and Jordan Whittington. I'd rank these guys Ford, Deontay, then Whittington. But Mikey coming out says start Najee or Chuba Hubbard. Well, real quick, wide receiver. I'm assuming we started Wilson. And tight ends, we go with Frymuth. Running back, Najee or Chuba. We're going to go with Najee. With Hubbard, he is actually kind of splitting there with Sanders, which with how bad the offense is, just no interest. He's not a talented enough running back. It's not good enough offense for him to be in a committee. Now, CFIT's coming out with the trade question. This is Walker versus Brian Robinson and Calvin Ridley. Is this filled out to be a 12-team start 8 format? So if that is, dear God, can y'all spam the chat? If this is a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, I think we probably go Kenneth Walker. But with a league where you have multiple flex spots where depth actually does matter a little bit more, I think the Brian Robinson and Calvin Ridley side is interesting. Can y'all please spam the chat? Do you want Walker, Brian Robinson, Calvin Ridley here? Walker or Brian Robinson and Ridley? 1 vote Walker, 2 votes Walker. Mark says, honestly, it's a very even trade. I'd go Robinson and Ridley, though. That's why I'm saying if it's a multiple flex league, I think I'd probably take this side, single flex, and just take the best player. Chris says, how do I submit for a trade review? It's the little comment button in the top right corner, my friend. Walker, the Ridley, Walker, Robinson, Walker, Robinson. It does look like most people are saying Walker, and honestly, I think it's close enough for me to just listen to the crowd. Adam coming out with a trade question. This is Jameson and Zamir versus Etienne and Brian Thomas. This is easily Etienne and Brian Thomas for me. I'd rather have Thomas over Zamir. I'd rather have Etienne over Jameson. Says, you did a team review for me today. I received this trade today. Do you still think I should take it? Yeah, I mean, my thing is, I think Jameson is going to come back down to earth down just a bit when we no longer had the 55 passing attempts going around in Detroit. So if we can pivot over to the Jags options, I think I would. But Jason coming out with a trade question. I think we actually already answered this. But Demarcus Robinson is an absolute zero for me with this. It's really between Waddle and George Pickens. I think over like the next month, I'd rather have Pickens. But long-term, when we get Tua back in, I'm going to take the Waddle side of this. But we will get to that question maybe tomorrow. And I definitely want to get through all the trade questions that we can right now in case anybody's in active talks. Says, is this a good deal? I'd hate to give up Dobbins, but I'm not as strong with running backs. Once Mason's benched for CMC, he was my strongest start at running back. So Samaje Perine barely worth the raw spot. Doesn't make a difference here. We're really trading Najee and Dobbins for London and Ford, which honestly I would be okay with. But knowing if you are screwed at running back, while at the same time, the trades that I've seen involving J.K. Dobbins, where Dobbins just has so much value, I would hold off for a little bit more from J.K. Dobbins if you're telling me we're extremely weak at running back. Card says, is T an auto start this week? If not, who's the second flex? So our options here would be Rome or Higgins, really. You can't start Irving, can't start Chase, can't start Johnston, especially with the Herbert injury. Raheem Mostert is out. And between Higgins and Rome, both dealing with their own injuries, Higgins going to be in the much better offense with the much better matchup going up against Washington. So I actually think in this range, Higgins is an auto start. We will take T. Higgins. Now, Ledex coming out with the question. Always happy to see you, my friend. This is a question at wide receiver. We're picking between Addison. Addison's out, so it's Brian Thomas and Jameson. We're going to go Jameson there. With the running back slot, we have no CMC, no Chubb. Benson's not viable. It's really between Jacobs, Steele, Zamir, Moss. We will go Josh Jacobs, even though I think both Moss and Zamir are in great matchups. And then for the flex spots, I think we're going to go ahead. We will take Zach Moss, which should be a very high-scoring offense in Cincy. And then for the last flex, it's really going to be between Carson Steele and Zamir White. If you look at where I have these players ranked, I actually do have them pretty much back-to-back here. But I think we go Zamir based off the very strong matchup he has going up against Carolina and the encouraging usage if you're looking at the snap data from last week. And I do think that this is a matchup where this team can afford to actually be a little more run heavy. But we're going to go back and answer some more of these trade questions real quick. Just in case, like I said, if anybody's in active talks or anything. K-Med says, I also traded Taylor for Aaron Jones, Ford, and Gibbs. Wait, what? Taylor and Gibbs. I'm sorry. I love the Gibbs deal. But looking at this, Smith, Jalen Wright's a nothing. Quentin Johnson's nothing in this deal. These players are barely worth raw spots. They're waiver wire options. Devonta Smith and J.K. Dobbins versus Bijan Robinson by a mile. And this is what I'm talking about previously when we look at other Dobbins trades. And I go, okay, I'd be fine trading Dobbins for this. But then I see these crazy price tags of what people are getting for J.K. Dobbins. So I love that, my friend. Okay. Austin says, so I just signed up with an email, then I get a team review on a live stream. Yeah, so if you signed up to Underdog Fantasy, use promo code FLOCK, and made at least a $10 deposit, then set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address, because Underdog sends me a list of all those emails every single morning from the previous day. And then I go ahead and I give all those free team review vouchers, all those accounts free team review vouchers. So yeah, if you made that $10 deposit on Underdog, just set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address. That way you can get granted with a free team review voucher. Just need to be able to find the team, of course. Find the account, which I need the email addresses to line up. But this starts a question coming out from Jason. So essentially, we are looking for this second flex spot. Here, it's really going to be between the combination of Pittman and George Pickens. You do have Josh Downs playing this week, which is a little bit of a knock on Michael Pittman Jr. Both of these wide receivers are going to be in situations in which they are in low volume passing attacks. You have A-Rich, you have Fields giving the rushing upside. If you're looking at sportsbook projections right now, you do have the Colts projecting out to be a much higher scoring offense. So actually then we go Pittman. I don't feel super confident with it. Looking at the rest of the starting lineup, though, I do think we keep the rest of the lineup as is. Obviously, if we can no longer change tight end. Okay. Now, D. Nichols says, sure what to do with the wide receiver in the flex spots. So here at receiver, yeah, I mean, this is a tough situation. I think we go with both of the Houston names with Diggs and Dell. Obviously, Nico has looked absolutely dominant, but at the same time, it should just be a very strong passing offense. You make an argument as well that if you potentially have if you have no Mixon and no Pierce, they look to really just air the ball out. And then for the flex, it's really just going to be between Pollard and Amari. I think you have to bench Waddle given the game environment. And honestly, with Spears being banged up a bit, it does sound like Spears is going to play, but you can go ahead and you can start Tony Pollard over Amari Cooper. Now, STR, this is a trade question between Jalen Waddle and Tank Dell. If you look at my rankings on the site real quick, you'll see that I have Waddle at 44. I'm sorry, Waddle at 24 and Tank Dell at 28. I do prefer Jalen Waddle over Tank Dell, where I think in the short term, give me Dell in the starting lineup, but I am expecting Tua to come back here. Now, Billy coming out. This is Laporta, Adams, Jacobs versus McBride and Chase. For looking at this, going from Laporta to McBride, that is an upgrade. Sadly, trust me, I wish Laporta was better. It's not the world we're living in, though. And then going from Adams to Chase, upgrade there as well. We're paying Jacobs to get it done. If you can afford this where it looks like it's a 2 wide receiver single flex format, I will go ahead and I honestly am fine making this pivot. Obviously, it is a risky pivot and you need to be extremely strong at running back. But if you're extremely strong at running back, I think you can do it. Okay. Proclamation coming out says he needs a tight end. I need a higher end quarterback. Backup tight end is Pitts. Trading away Bowers sucks. But going ETN to Gibbs, you get such a big upgrade. So honestly, I'm doing it, not necessarily because I think Richardson's a big deal, but ETN, Bowers, when we have Pitts as well, to go get Jahmyr Gibbs and we get the little cherry on top of it as well, I think that does make a ton of sense. Let's go get Gibbs and A-Rich here. Okay. Now, J-Way coming over says, currently 0-2. And I needed to make a move. I'm the team who's getting London. Okay. Blake Corum, Adam Thielen, barely worth Ross spots. This doesn't matter. This is a Keenan Allen, Keon Coleman trade for Drake London. I would very easily rather have Drake London, especially if you're 0-2, where you have Keenan hurt, and then obviously Keon just isn't that viable play just yet. You are expecting him to get better in the long term, but the long term isn't right now. But let's pull this up, see if we have any more of these questions, and we do. Nino coming out. This is a question where at tight end, we need to choose between Likely and Andrews. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Andrews over Likely. Actually, if you look at the projections that you have right now, there is a pretty big gap between these guys. Let's see. Will this load for us? Come on, computer. Why are we being so slow? Why is it loading so many? I guess it's just going slow. Anyway, we'll move this back over. I think Andrews does project out to be a much better option than Likely. If you look at the amount of routes that these players actually ran this past week, was surprising to see the limited usage that you had from Isaiah Likely. Going over to the flex between Amari, Dell, Likely, Steele. I am going to go ahead. I will take Tank Dell, to be honest with you. If you look at the targets, they have been there. It's still a very good offense. Like Amari's had the targets and he's disappointed, but we expect the Browns to be garbage. Dell's had the targets and he's disappointed, but I expect the Texans to have a lot of passing volume. Now, Ranji coming out with a start set. Here, really, this is a gross spot. You were starting Juwan Jennings, but I don't know if we have another option because we have Debo, Keenan, and A.J. Brown all listed as out. Our pivot running back off of Dobbins would be Gus Edwards or Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's not playing this week. So, yeah, there's definitely nothing that we can do here. I mean, really, it's just, would you potentially want to pivot over to a different wide receiver off the waiver wire than Juwan Jennings? But given the injury update with Kittle, Debo, and CMC, Jennings does seem like a perfectly fine option. Now, 1K11 coming out. This is a trade where we send Allen for Hurts, lateral move, Evans for London, lateral move. Perfect example of it. This is just your personal preference, whatever you were looking for. I can get the wisdom of the masses here. We can get the chat in. Can y'all please spam the chat? Would you rather have Josh Allen and Mike Evans, or would you rather have Drake London and Jalen Hurts? Would you rather have Josh Allen and Mike Evans, or would you rather have Drake London and Jalen Hurts? Please let me know in the live chat. Okay. Hurts, Allen. It looks like pretty much everybody is on Josh Allen here. I don't really care one way or another. Like I said, I think it's up to you. But if everybody's on Josh Allen, you go Josh Allen. For the sole purpose of, I mean, hell, you can have the trade value with them too. Okay. Let's move this over. We have some team reviews to get to. To be honest with you, it's past midnight. I ran 20 miles earlier today. Your boy is beat. We have another 20 miles we got to run tomorrow. So we're going to try to wake up earlier so we don't have to do it in the heat like we did today. So we're going to call it here. Much love, ladies and gentlemen. Be excited to get to these team reviews in the live stream tomorrow. Obviously, if you can't make the stream, they will be sent to you. So no worries whatsoever. And yeah, of course, if you ever ask any question on flockfantasy.com, we're going to cover it in the live stream. That clip will be sent to you. So all you got to do is copy and paste the YouTube URL. You'll go ahead and it'll take you right to your question being answered. So you can ask a question over there on flockfantasy.com, submit a team for review literally whenever you want, any time of the day. And at the same time, if you wanted that team review for free, like the majority of teams get, that's definitely what I'd recommend. Definitely take advantage of the offer that we have over on Underdog Fantasy. Or if you go over to Underdog and use promo code FLOCK, you will get that 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you are going to be getting a free Patrick Mahomes pick, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday. And on top of that, Underdog just running a ton of promos. You have an additional CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half a total yard. Just use promo code FLOCK and then set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address. That way I'm able to credit you with that free team review. But much love, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Thanks for sticking around with me for 3.5 hours for the handful of people that were. And yeah, I really hope I get to see you out in the live stream tomorrow night.